Welcome back to the DCPU, where we know sex exists, we've just never experienced it. I'm Frank, back again with my co-host Thomas to discuss the biggest flop in the DCEU, The Flash.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. The production of this film is probably one of the messiest productions in modern Hollywood. While The Flash had yet to grace the silver screen before this movie, the character had a series that ran for one season from 1990 to 1991, as well as the Arrowverse show that ran for 9 seasons, with the series finale coming out less than a month before this film. Oh, that's crazy. They had the whole show in the span before the movie came out.
So close, too.
And it was kind of interesting because the actor who played the Flash in the 90s show appeared in the CW show several times, along with other actors who played villains on the show. One of them was Mark Hamill.
Yeah, the trickster?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a flaw in your research here, Thomas. You see, Flash did have a live-action appearance before this on film. Have you ever heard of the cinematic masterpiece Daddy Daycare?
I have, but I haven't seen it. I'm waiting for the Criterion Collection version to come out. However, The Flash's transition from the page to the big screen was in the works all the way back in the 1980s, when screenwriter Jeff Loeb was working on an unproduced Flash film for Warner Brothers. However, he would later leave the project to go write a Challengers of the Unknown revival for DC Comics. And I was actually shocked to find out that Jeff Loeb was originally a screenwriter first and a comic writer second. He wrote Teen Wolf, Commando, Burglar, and Teen Wolf 2 before swapping over to start writing comics. And I had just always associated him with being a comic book writer first and foremost, so.
Yeah, same. I had no idea. Jumping forward just a few years to December 2004, after being impressed with the script for Batman Begins, Warner Brothers tapped David S. Goyer to write, produce, and direct a DC film, offering either Green Lantern or The Flash. Obviously, given the subject of this episode, he chose The Flash, and in an interview, he said that the film was going to be a lot lighter than his other superhero scripts for Batman and Blade, also saying that the script would feature Wally West as The Flash, and that the tone would be closer to Spider-Man.
Spider-Man mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good movie. He also said that he'd love to have Ryan Reynolds play the role of the Flash. Reynolds would later say at the Wizard World LA convention in March 2005 that he would love to star in the movie after working with Goyer on Blade Trinity. I think it's ironic because Ryan Reynolds would of course go on to lead the Green Lantern film less than a decade later. I admittedly do think I could see him as the Flash. Maybe not Wally, though. Probably Barry. I'm not a Flash reader, so I'm completely talking out of my ass. And I don't like Ryan Reynolds either, but I can kind of see it.
Well, what is your exposure with Flash? Is it the Justice League show?
Justice League show. I watched the first season or so of the CW show. I've read some comics. I've read Flashpoint. Absolute Flash is alright.
Usually Barry isn't as jokey. He's more serious. Like, he'll have his jokes, but Wally is the more, like, off-the-cuff, kind of jokey type.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Frank just talking out of his ass.
I don't like Ryan Reynolds. However, Goyer eventually ended up leaving the project sometime in late 2006 or early 2007, writing on his MySpace blog, MySpace, quote, "I am sad to say that my version of The Flash is dead at WB. The God's honest truth is that WB and myself simply couldn't agree on what would make for a cool Flash film. I'm quite proud of the screenplay it turned in. I threw my heart into it, and I genuinely think it would have been the basis of a groundbreaking film, but as of now, the studio is heading off in a completely different direction." He would later go into further details in a different blog post saying, "To be honest, when WB first approached me about doing The Flash, it seemed a little too good to be true. A part of me thought they'd never really make a movie like that. For the record, the script did involve both Barry and Wally as the Flash. I wanted to showcase the legacy aspect of the hero, as that was something that hadn't been explored yet in film. Like Batman Begins, the script drew on some seminal comic book runs, parentheses Mike Baron, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, end parentheses. I like that idea."
I'm trying to think if there is, like, even to this day, a movie that kind of involves the legacy aspect of a hero, and I feel like they haven't really done.
Sky High.
Well, okay, you're not wrong.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I think you're right. I don't think there has been. I guess at this point you could say Spider-Man No Way Home. You get a bit of that at the end of the film when the other two show up, but...
To me, legacy means more of, like, passing down, and I see those, like, the 3 Spider-Men as contemporaries working on, like, the same level. The closest thing I can think of would be, like, the end of Dark Knight Rises when they're like, oh yeah, you're Robin, and he takes over the Batcave.
That's pretty tenuous, and fuck that movie.
The only other one I can think of would be Captain America, but I don't feel like they've done a good enough job with Anthony Mackie as Captain America to feel like he's a legacy hero.
Yeah, I mean, it took 6 years for his movie to come out after Endgame, and it was a stinker, right? So.
Yeah. Warner Brothers instead got Sean Levy to direct, potentially due to the stellar performance of his film Night at the Museum at the box office. Love that movie. Writer Chris Brancato was responsible for the script for Levy's version of the project, working off of elements of Goyer's submitted draft. Brancato has a huge resume as a network TV writer and is the co-creator of Narcos and Godfather of Harlem. What else did he write for network TV?
Like a lot of Law and Order and crime shows and stuff like that. He's been working for a long time. He's got a lot of different screenwriting credits under his belt, but mostly TV. He's not really a movie guy.
I guess that would work to his strengths if they were going to do more of like his crime lab job.
That's a good point, yeah. If you had like a more of a Law and Order vibe to that, focusing on that aspect of the character, yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
Levy would eventually leave The Flash, saying, I oversaw a draft for about 3.5 months, and at that time, I learned 2 things. One, if you're going to take on a character like that, I was still the family comedy guy, and I just felt like I gotta get a few more under my belt before I can claim the legitimacy of making a movie like that. And that's what I'm doing, to be very honest. I'm not saying I have a master plan to go back to The Flash, but in the end, The Flash went away because Justice League was going to happen. And then it didn't happen, to my great dismay, because I would have been first in line for that too. He cited the scheduling issues with the Night at the Museum sequel as the reason he left as well. And the Justice League project he was referencing is of course George Miller's cancelled film Justice League Mortal, which was supposed to release in 2007. And we talked about this project before in the Justice League episode, so go listen to that one if you haven't. And interestingly enough, in that project, Adam Brody was cast as the Flash, and while this project wouldn't work out, he would end up in DC movies as Adult Freddy in the Shazam franchise.
In November 2007, Warner Brothers got David Dobkin to direct, replacing Levy, with Craig Wright coming aboard to write another script. David Dobkin's other directing work at the time included Shanghai Nights, Wedding Crashers, and Fred Claus.
Oh boy, Fred Claus, my favorite movie.
I remember liking it, but I was also a kid and stupid, so... Craig Wright had no film writing credits, only writing credits on TV shows like 6 Feet Under, Lost, and Brothers and Sisters. In an interview with MTV News, Dobkin confirmed that his Flash film would be connected to the Justice League Mortal universe, and that it would be following Wally West as Flash, not Barry Allen. You know, again, after Justice League Mortal was scrapped due to the WGA strike and everything else we talked about in our Justice League episode, this Flash movie was also scrapped.
There was another attempt to bring a Flash project to life in July 2009. A little less than a year after the last one was cancelled. Jeff Johns was hired by Jeff Robinov, remember him? No, I don't, to write a treatment for the film.
He was the executive... He was the Warner Brothers Picture Group president during Man of Steel, who got fired like a week after Man of Steel came out.
Oh, okay. No wonder I don't remember him.
Similarly to Jeff Loeb, I didn't realize that Jeff Johns also got their start in film. He was a production assistant for Richard Donner. He was calling Richard Donner's office begging for a job, and Donner happened to pick up the phone himself and just gave Jeff Johns a job as an assistant.
What the hell? I need to start doing that, I guess.
Also, what's with all the Jeffs?
I don't know.
Jeff Johns, Jeff Robinov, Jeff Loeb.
I guess to work at Warner Brothers, you need to be named Jeff. Jeff Johns' treatment would use elements of Brancato's script from the Levy film, which writer Dan Mazeau would adapt into a screenplay. Dan Mazeau had no past works to speak of, aside from a spec script for a family comedy called The Land of Lost Things. It was supposed to get made into a film by Paramount, but never did. He was also hired at some point after the spec script to reboot Johnny Quest for Warner Brothers, but nothing ever came of that either.
Why the fuck are they giving this guy the Flash?
I feel like we say that every episode.
Because it's true! Like, when I was doing research on him, I couldn't find shit about shit. Especially at this point in his career. I also think it's funny that Jeff Johns is cannibalizing the Chris Brancato script, which was cannibalizing the script from David S. Goyer. So at this point, the Flash project has become a copy of a copy.
I wonder how often this happens in movies where they have scripts going down and how much actually trickles from script to script, where like each one is different.
Yeah, it could happen more often than we think. It's just that this film is so unusually well documented in its production that I guess we just don't hear about that sort of thing.
Charles Roven, who had also been attached as a producer on The Flash since Goyer's iteration of the project, would tell IGN just 3 months later that this version of the project would be dead too, saying, "I was involved at one point with The Flash. and Warner Brothers came to me and said, "The work that you've been doing hasn't yet resulted in something that any of us, including the filmmaking team, feel could be greenlit as a movie. We're trying to accomplish something that takes into account the entire rich DC character world, and we'd like you to pull it back. That doesn't mean that you aren't going to be a part of it. We just want you to take a different kind of approach. Do you mind if we try that? If we had something that was really working, like for example, they had something that was more or less working for them on Green Lantern, and then now you have Martin Campbell directing it, but we didn't. The David Goyer screenplay, that didn't work. Goyer left the project. We then embarked with David Dobkin, trying to come up with another approach. We hadn't even hired a writer at that point, so for us we completely understood. I've been making movies with Warner Brothers for 15 years, so that was fine, but I hope one day there's a way for me to get re-involved in that project."
And for those who need a refresher, Charles Roven was a producer on Man of Steel and a bunch of the other DCU movies. So he would eventually make a bunch of DC movies with Warner Brothers, but he would not be attached as a producer on The Flash in its final form.
They couldn't even just throw him a bone.
I'm sure he's doing fine. I'm not going to feel sorry for Charles Roven.
I will. Charles Roven, give me a job. I feel bad for you.
You feel bad for him, and yet you want him to give you a job?
Well, I feel like if he knows I feel bad for him, he'll feel bad for me knowing I feel bad for him.
Okay, and then you're just stuck in a loop forever. Speaking of some other people I don't feel sorry for, in June 2010, writers Greg Berlanti, Michael Green, and Mark Guggenheim, who were responsible for writing 2011's Green Lantern film, were tasked with writing a treatment based off Jeff Johns' contemporary Flash comics. I think it's ironic that Jeff Johns' own treatment for the Flash movie wasn't good enough, but then they hired these three guys to come in and adapt his Flash comics for a movie instead.
Kind of a slap to the face, a little bit.
Yeah.
Although this was years later, so...
No, it wasn't. It was
2 years later.
No. Jeff Johns was hired to write that treatment in 2009.
Oh.
This is 2010. This is like 11 months later. And they had completed a draft by February 2011, but when Green Lantern bombed just 4 months later, obviously this iteration would become doomed. So that sucks for them, but I don't need to feel sorry for them because Berlanti and Guggenheim would go on to be architects of the Arrowverse, and Michael Green's written a bunch of movies since then. So it's not like these guys are starving artists or anything.
I feel bad for you guys. Give me a job.
And a few years after this, we would all be introduced to the DCEU in 2013 with Man of Steel. And then a year after that, we would get the official slate presented by Kevin Tsujihara, which we've talked about before.
The GOAT.
Calling sexual predators GOAT.
Well, they call Kobe one, so...
Yeah, well, he fucking died. With a Flash film set to release on March 23rd, 2018, with Ezra Miller to star after their debut in Batman v Superman. Also, quick note, we did misgender Ezra Miller in our Justice League episode. Neither of us knew they were non-binary. We've already apologized for that weeks ago, but for anybody who didn't read the comments or the episode description, we're sorry, okay? We didn't know. We failed to do the very basic research of checking. If you listen to our Aquaman episode, you know that around this time, James Wan was offered the choice to make either a DCU Flash movie or Aquaman movie, choosing Aquaman because he felt that it gave him more of an opportunity to be creative. Mostly because Flash already has a history on TV. The first director to reject the Flash in the DCEU, not the last. In April 2015, it was reported that Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were working on a treatment for the Flash film with potential to direct as well.
I feel like they would have had a home run here, because they're a really great team. They've made 21 and 22 Jump Street, the Lego Movie, and the Spider-Verse films.
Yeah, they're great writers. Great at comedies, specifically. It's funny, too, because the Flash, at the end of the day, would end up competing directly with Across the Spider-Verse and make a lot less money than Across the Spider-Verse. While it was never officially offered to them, Lord and Miller likely would have passed on directing The Flash anyway, so that they could direct Solo, a Star Wars story for Disney. And I can't say I'd blame them for making that choice, because who the hell wouldn't want to direct a Star Wars movie? Like, especially at this point in time, because The Force Awakens hadn't even come out yet. Like, imagine being asked to direct and write a Star Wars movie.
That was before? Oh, yeah. You're right.
Yeah, well, they would have been hired before, because
yeah.
Force Awakens was like Christmas 2015, because Bob Iger didn't want to give them as much time as they needed to make the movie. But that's a whole other story for a different podcast. I don't know who would make such a podcast, but...
After Lord and Miller passed... Can I say passed on the project? After they passed. After they passed away. After Lord and Miller passed on the project, Warner Brothers turned to Seth Grahame-Smith in October 2015 to write and direct the film based off of Lord and Miller's treatment. This would be Seth Grahame-Smith's directorial debut, as he is a writer/screenwriter with projects like the novels Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, along with Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. He also worked as a screenwriter on Dark Shadows, and the adaptation of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and the Lego Batman movie. And before long, in April 2016, Seth Grahame-Smith left the project due to creative differences. It was reported that going forward, the project would keep his script. And I think that choosing him in the first place was another interesting choice since he has no directing past, and a very heavy VFX directorial debut movie does not sound ideal.
Yeah, I agree. We've only said it 50 fucking times on this show, but you can't be giving these tentpole movies to these people who've got no experience. I mean, clearly you can. They would do it over and over, but it just makes very little sense to me. I mean, it's one thing if this was a guy who had VFX experience, like Joseph Kominsky, who made Tron Legacy. He was a VFX guy, and then he would later go on to do Top Gun Maverick. You know, that's one thing, but to take a screenwriter who's got no directing experience, that's a little more shaky to me.
I'm pretty sure he still hasn't directed anything yet either.
But before Grahame-Smith left in February 2016, the film would get its first release date shift, moving forward, actually, to March 16th, 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was at this point in the timeline that Batman v Superman would release, and in May, just a month after that, DC Films would be established. The next director to step up to the plate was Rick Famuyiwa, who was hired in June 2016. Warner Brothers had an inkling that Famuyiwa would be able to make a film that resonated with a younger audience, as he had just done his recent film Dope, a movie about a geek trying to survive a tough LA neighborhood. They also thought that his vision of the film meshed together well with Grahame-Smith's script. Some of Famuyiwa's other works include The Wood, Brown Sugar, Talk to Me, and Our Family Wedding, as well as directing several episodes of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. Despite the director change, production was not expected to be delayed. One of the first things Famuyiwa did was cast Kiersey Clemons in the role of Iris West. He previously worked with Clemons in Dope, and other names in the mix for the role included Rita Ora and Lucy Boynton. In July 2016, while Famuyiwa's version was in development, Warner Brothers would give away The Flash's release date to Alicia Vikander's Tomb Raider reboot, leaving The Flash with no release date. And in what is a surprising twist in hindsight, in August 2016 it was reported that Ray Fisher was going to reprise his role as Cyborg in the film. By September, Famuyiwa teased a new draft of the script by posting a picture to Twitter, with a Flash and Cyborg Funko Pop standing on top. Those things are literal garbage.
To me, it felt like based on this, it seemed like Cyborg would have had a larger role in the film, which makes sense to me because a lot of Famuyiwa's work seems to involve like black characters and aspects of that experience. So I bet Cyborg would have had probably a second billing role. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I would have loved to see that. I mean, obviously, especially knowing how things shook out, Cyborg gets completely screwed over in this franchise, but I think that would have been a fun team-up. In September 2016, they also found their Henry Allen, Barry's father, in the form of Billy Crudup. It's also worth noting that at this time, articles were saying that production on the film was still expected to start that year, so late 2016. Clemons and Crudup filmed cameos for Justice League, meaning that Famuyiwa's casting choices were already affecting other films in the universe. Which is pretty funny because Famuyiwa would leave the Flash project in late October, citing, like Grahame-Smith before him, creative differences with the studio.
I think that could be the subtitle of this DCPU, Creative Differences. It's starting to sound like when my girlfriend left me and cited creative differences.
Famuyiwa would later share his thoughts on the situation, saying, quote, "When I was approached by Warner Brothers in DC about the possibility of directing The Flash, I was excited about the opportunity to enter this amazing world of characters that I loved growing up, and still do to this day. I was also excited to work with Ezra Miller, who is a phenomenal young actor. I pitched a version of the film in line with my voice, humor, and heart. While it's disappointing that we couldn't come together creatively on the project, I remain grateful for the opportunity. I will continue to look for opportunities to tell stories that speak to a fresh, generational, topical, and multicultural point of view." What an eloquent statement. I only laugh because we will find out later that Ezra Miller is a little unstable.
No.
Sources indicated that the studio wasn't quite seeing eye to eye with Famuyiwa, as he wanted the film to have a bit more, quote, edge.
I mean, maybe if they didn't want to be so, and I don't even know what they mean by edge, but maybe they shouldn't have hired the guy who just made a movie about kids selling drugs in LA.
Yeah.
Well, not much from this canceled version of the Flash movie has been talked about. I remember hearing a lot of rumors that Famuyiwa would have the rogues be the villains, And then there's supposed to be a more political subplot about corrupt cops or police brutality, with some saying that a young black kid would get killed by a cop.
Definitely don't see Warner Brothers touching that with a 10-foot pole in their Flash movie.
No.
But it could be good.
In January 2017, while Ezra Miller was busy filming their role for Fantastic Beasts 2, Warner Brothers would contact writer Joby Harold to write a new draft from the ground up. Hobie had only written 2 films at this point, Awake and King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
Yeah, doing research on this guy, it seems like he's more of a producer, especially around this point in his career. I don't know why they'd go with him for a project like this. My only guess is that he has produced films that Warner Brothers had distributed before, like Edge of Tomorrow. So it's possible that he was just cashing in a favor with somebody. Also, as we've been discussing, the studio's vision for this film seems to be completely incoherent. They've gone through at least half a dozen writers or more at this point in production, so I don't know what they want. So maybe whatever this guy was selling was what they wanted at that moment, but I don't know. Again, like, this is not a guy that inspires confidence in me.
I don't know, his directorial debut, Awake, has Hayden Christensen in it, and Terrence Howard, and Jessica Alba, who was nominated for Worst Actress at the Golden Raspberry Awards. So
the Golden Raspberry Awards. Guy who calls the Razzies by their full name.
That's just what Wikipedia says, because I was trying to figure out what Awake was.
Oh yeah, I didn't even look at that.
The frontrunner for director at this point was Robert Zemeckis, director of Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Castaway, etc. But he had commitments to his film Welcome to Marwen first.
Yeah, a man who needs no introduction. Or at least that's what I thought, until I learned that Thomas has not seen Back to the Future.
But I know who he is. I've seen parts of Forrest Gump.
Parts?
Yeah. In May, sources would tell Entertainment Weekly that Matthew Vaughn was also being courted for the job, and that both Sam Raimi and Mark Webb had previously been approached and rejected this position. I feel like Matthew Vaughn is attached to a lot of superhero movies that never get made, or at least with his version of it.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've already talked about on the show that he was at one point considered to do a Man of Steel sequel.
And he did X-Men, the first X-Men, First Class, and then he got kicked off the next ones.
Yeah, and I think at one point he was in talks to come back for the X-Men MCU version that they ended up giving to...
Oh yeah, the guy who did Thunderbolts, Jake something.
Jake Schreier.
But because of Kingsman 3, Vaughn would eventually pass. Also, Mark Webb just made, like, the shittiest fucking Spider-Man movie. Why would they want him?
Yeah, great question. I don't like either of the Amazing movies that much. I think 2 is better. That's a great point. I don't know why they would try and court Mark Webb for this. And I've always maintained the position that Mark Webb only got the job of directing The Amazing Spider-Man because of his fucking name.
It could be.
I mean, it's good marketing, I suppose, but yeah. There were also reports around this time that Jordan Peele had been offered the job after the success of Get Out, which had just come out that year. But I couldn't find any serious sources for that. There were a lot of credible reports of him being offered Akira, which was the live-action adaptation of the Akira manga, which was being made by Warner Brothers, which he did pass on for sure. So it doesn't seem far-fetched that the company would ask him to direct Flash, too. If they're going to ask him to direct Akira, it doesn't seem like that much of a stretch.
While the company was still waiting on Zemeckis, they're still waiting on him? They had reached back out to Lord and Miller during what would be called a production hiatus on Solo.
And yeah, they were still waiting on Robert Zemeckis at this point, which I think is very funny that they would pause the entire movie to wait for this guy to finish the movie he's currently working on. But on the other hand, it's Robert fucking Zemeckis. I mean, he's had some misses, but the films of his that are hits are hits. He just goes up to bat a lot, you know?
They're like, we could hire 5 unknowns, or we could just wait on Robert.
I mean, if it was between hiring some shitheads who've never directed anything in their lives, or the guy who made Back to the Future, I would wait on the guy who made Back to the Future, especially considering how the script for this film would turn out.
At Comic-Con 2017, it was revealed that the film would be titled Flashpoint, based on the Jeff Johns comic with the same name.
Okay, out of all of the Flash stories they could have adapted, Flashpoint seems like the most bizarre option, right? It's a complete continuity reset, so not exactly the most reassuring thing to see as an audience member or like a fan, to be announced as the Flash's first solo project, especially because Justice League hadn't even come out at this point. It does not inspire confidence in Justice League either. It's just a weird choice. Like, again, I'm not a big Flash comic reader, but I feel like there's probably a lot of other story arcs you could have done before Flashpoint.
I mean, oh yeah, there's a lot, but I think they wanted to use aspects of Flashpoint, because even in the final version of the movie, I wouldn't really call it like Flashpoint. It's like mini Flashpoint. It's not on the same scale, but they definitely should not have been like, yeah, we're doing Flashpoint.
Yeah, the final film is, I would call, a very loose adaptation of Flashpoint. And going back to Robert Zemeckis, the final film ends up using the Flashpoint, like, Speed Force time travel more like Robert Zemeckis' Back to the Future than it does the actual Flashpoint story. So you're right, it isn't one-to-one, but at the time, you got to imagine being a fan and seeing this announced at Comic-Con. I mean, I don't have to imagine. I was a fan who saw this announced, and I went, they're already doing Flashpoint? Why? It's like if they were doing Secret Wars before the Avengers.
It's like if they did Death of Superman and Superman's second appearance in the universe.
Yeah, could you imagine jumping the gun like that? Who would do such a thing? What kind of mismanagement would lead to those decisions?
And in September 2017, it was reported that Gal Gadot was going to reprise her role as Wonder Woman in The Flash.
I am amazed that she still ended up in the final film. Like, this film went through so many different rewrites, including after this, that I'm just amazed that she still made an appearance after all.
Honestly, they should have just kept Cyborg in her role, but I mean, I guess we know why that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Never mind.
In January 2018, a post-Justice League world, newly appointed CEO of DC Films Walter Hamada had decided to stop waiting on Robert Zemeckis and just go with someone else, hiring John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein to co-direct the film. They had written a handful of comedies, including Horrible Bosses, Vacation, which was the Lega-sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, and most importantly, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Can we make Lega-sequel a new word?
I'm not going to take credit for that. I remember hearing it somewhere.
Damn it. Okay, never mind.
In a different podcast.
You should have just lied. I thought that was really clever.
Before this, they had directed Vacation and the adult comedy film Game Night. In the same report about this news from Variety, it was also revealed that the studio had quietly approached Ben Affleck at some point to direct the film before hiring Daley and Goldstein. Now, he had just dropped out of directing the Batman solo film a year prior to this, and in the meantime, Justice League happened. What the hell were Hamada and the rest of them thinking with this? Why would you reach back out to Ben Affleck at what is undoubtedly his lowest point with this fucking company and the character and shit?
He's in news headlines saying, like, I had a really rough go of it during Justice League. I was in a really bad state. They're like, do you want to come back and make a movie with us?
Do you want to direct the Flash movie? Yeah, no, exactly. It's completely tone deaf. Like, read the fucking room, Hamada. Why would you reach back out to Ben Affleck? It just doesn't make any sense. And also, in a weird choice, in April 2018, The Hollywood Reporter revealed that Dan Mazeau came back to work on the latest draft of the project, which... he was the guy who was, like, working on the Jeff Johns version or something. You know, the guy who had written basically nothing. Well, I guess there's a few people, so let me try narrow it down a little bit more.
The first guy who had written nothing.
He was the guy who had written that, like, spec script and was supposed to reboot Johnny Quest. So, I don't know why they would bring him back all these fucking years later, but I guess they did. And in the same article revealing that Dan Mazeau came back, they also revealed that the film was no longer titled Flashpoint. In August, it was reported that production would begin in February-March 2019 with a planned release date in 2021. However, that date would quickly be pushed back to late 2019 in order to accommodate Ezra Miller's commitments to Fantastic Beasts 3. But at this point, the film was still set for a 2021 release date. In February 2019, it was reported that Daley and Goldstein were writing the film, in addition to directing it. And it was also announced that Michael Disco would produce the film with his new company, The Disco Factory. He had worked with the duo on their film Game Night.
What a cool fucking name. Michael Disco.
That is a good name. I'm reading a note that Thomas put in here for me to read. The Disco Factory's first job was producing the Sopranos prequel film. Yes, The Many Saints of Newark. A film that I like, and most of the Sopranos fandom, the vast majority of the Sopranos fandom, hates. So, yeah.
I thought it was funny that they've been working on this movie so long that Fantastic Beasts 2 and 3 have pushed back the release date because Ezra Miller has been working on them.
That's so true.
And in a surprising twist, in March 2019, it was announced that Ezra Miller was teaming up with Grant Morrison to write their own script for the film. The reports say that while Daley and Goldstein were going for a lighthearted approach, Miller still wanted there to be a bit of a darker take on the material. It was rumored that if Warner Brothers didn't pick Miller's version, the actor could step away from the project, as their holding deal expired in May. But by July, the board had been wiped clean once more. Warner Brothers rejected Miller and Morrison's script, and Daly and Goldstein moved on from the project due to progress on the film lagging, and creative differences once again, instead making Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I think that anything with Grant Morrison on it immediately gets my attention, because they're one of the most prolific modern comic book writers.
Oh yeah, Grant Morrison is one of the biggest names in comics. They wrote All-Star Superman. I would definitely think that this is better than most of the stuff they've commissioned from other writers before this.
When Rolling Stone asked what the deal was with their unused draft, Morrison said, "Well, there had been a few versions, and as far as I remember, Ezra just wasn't quite happy with what they were getting at the time. And Ezra had a lot of ideas, and then we worked together. It really was just the two of us. They came over here to Scotland and hung out, and we wrote the thing. I really liked it. Warner Brothers only gave us 2 weeks. It was cruelty, you know, it was hardcore. We had to be like the Flash to get this thing done, and they were looking for something quite different. I got paid and it was good fun. It didn't do the job they were looking for, which was to franchise things and set things up, and bring other characters in. It was a Flash story, so it wasn't where they wanted to go with multiverse and stuff. And that was the end of it." Talking to Collider, Morrison would speak more on the tone of the project, saying, "No, it wasn't darker really. I mean, elements of darkness were there, and the material that they wanted us to use was the Flashpoint stuff. It's kind of like just a great science fiction story. And if you don't know the comics, it would have made sense. But I have to say, I mean, I don't want to talk about that because somebody else has done their own work on it, and I'm sure it'll be great. And maybe as I say this will leak out one day and people can judge. Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with it, but it was pretty good. And it was a very different kind of superhero thing. It was more like Back to the Future, I would say, than a superhero movie." Looking back on the movie, I would have totally have it be a standalone movie since the franchise got shit canned, because so much multiverse stuff had been done by the time of this film release that everyone was tired of it.
Yeah, it's not great timing. No Way Home had come out 2 years before The Flash would eventually come out and kind of eat its lunch, and in the same window, which we'll talk about soon, Across the Spider-Verse would come out, making The Flash look much worse by comparison. I'm very interested in this version of the script. I tried to find as many versions as I could. The ones I found online were Goyer's, Brancato's, and the Berlanti and Guggenheim version. I would really love to read the Grant Morrison version. And I do like that they tease, like, oh, maybe somebody will leak it someday. And it's like, well, it could be you, buddy. I'm also interested in what Miller was doing because, as we'll get into later, Ezra Miller's got some really weird obsessions and weird fucked up things going on, so I would be very curious to see what this looked like. In July, Warner Brothers hired Andy Muschietti, the director of the recent hit film It, to direct, and Christina Hodson to write the film. Ezra Miller would be staying in as Barry Allen. As we know, Hodson had written Birds of Prey, which at this time hadn't been released, and the Transformers spin-off / prequel Bumblebee. Muschietti's sister, Barbara, would also produce the film. In an interview in August 2019, Muschietti revealed that he would start working on The Flash after wrapping up work on It Chapter 2. He also shot down ideas of there being horror elements in The Flash, saying, quote, "An element of horror? I don't think so. What captivated me about The Flash is the human drama in it, the human feelings and emotions that play in the drama of it. It's going to be fun, too. I can't promise that there'll be any horror elements in it really, but it's a beautiful human story." In January 2020, Miller would reprise their role in the CW adaptation of Crisis on Infinite Earths in a surprise cameo, where they would meet Grant Gustin's version of the character, in which Miller would get the idea for their superhero name. Finally, in December 2019, Warner Brothers announced that The Flash's new release date would be July 1st, 2022. And just as a reminder, when it was first announced, this was supposed to release in 2018, so it's already been 4 years behind schedule. In January 2020, Muschietti confirmed that the film would still adapt parts of the Flashpoint series due to the studio wanting to use that story, but that it would tell a slightly different version of it, which is kind of an understatement. He also likened the film to Jacob's Ladder for its structure, saying that the film's version of Flashpoint would be like a suspenseful film because of the build-up. I don't know what that means.
That's what he was saying. I was questioning it because I didn't really get any sense of suspense in the film at all, but whatever.
I also think it's fucking hilarious that he's comparing it to Jacob's Ladder. I've seen Jacob's Ladder. I'm going to assume you haven't.
No, I've watched it like every day of my life.
Okay. So Jacob's Ladder is the movie that directly inspired Silent Hill. Suffice to say, The Flash is nothing like that in structure or tone. It's such a stupid thing to say. It actually makes me think Muschietti is a fucking moron. Not only because the quote I just read said, is it makes no sense about it being a suspense film because of the build-up, but also, like, this film is nothing like Jacob's Ladder in tone or story, and Jacob's Ladder is also not that popular of a film. Like, I mean, people know what it is, but it's not like The Shining or something. So when you're saying that the film is like Jacob's Ladder, it's not as if that's going to generate a lot of hype by making the comparison. So why the fuck did he say this? I don't know, just a very dumb thing to say.
Well, they did release a remake in 2019, so maybe that's why he was talking about it.
Jacob's Ladder?
Apparently, yeah.
Well, the fact that I haven't heard of it tells you all you need to know.
On April 20th, 2020, haha, for 2020, it was announced that The Flash was moving up a month to June 3rd, 2022. And in June 2020, one of the biggest bits of news about the film dropped. Michael Keaton was in talks to return as Batman, reprising his role from Batman and Batman Returns. It was also reported that Keaton's return might not be relegated to one film, with sources saying that Warner Brothers was envisioning him in some sort of Nick Fury-like role going forward in the DCEU, including appearances in other films like Batgirl and potentially a Supergirl movie. Which, this has always been the point in the DCEU where I just don't know what they were doing, and it's so clear that they didn't have a plan because they didn't have Superman. They had Wonder Woman, but they had no Batman. And then they want to bring in this, like, 70-year-old Batman to be their mainline Batman. And then just have Batgirl and Supergirl and Wonder Woman, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want a 70-year-old Batman as the main Batman in the universe, because it's going to be weird, and you can't tell all his best stories. Just never made any sense to me why they would be like, we should bring him back full-time.
Yeah, it's a baffling decision. I couldn't agree more. And not only is it a 70-year-old Batman, it's not even a new 70-year-old Batman. They're reheating the leftovers of Tim Burton's movie from over 30 years ago. It just screams desperation in that sense. And you're right, it shows that they have no fucking clue. They are riding by the seat of their pants.
I think as a one-off it's cool, but then when you try to have it as more than like a one-off, that's when I start to be like, okay, no. I'm already hesitant of the movie being a multiverse movie for Flash's first solo film in of itself, and then they're like, what if we just kind of use it to soft reboot the whole franchise and just bring in these random characters?
And at this point, they were still going to do all of this and still not have Henry Cavill as Superman back.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we don't need a Superman and a Batman. Why? Who goes to see Superman and Batman movies?
Yeah.
It's not like it's like the third highest grossing film in our franchise. In June 2020, it was reported that Warner Brothers had offered Ray Fisher a small role in the film. However, Fisher later revealed that while he had initial talks with Andy Muschietti, discussions hit a snag as Warner Brothers framed his appearance as a cameo and offered a small amount of money for what was supposed to be like a 2-week shoot. The press would later try to spin this report as him saying that he didn't think that he was making enough money from it and trying to double his pay, when he felt that they were just underpaying him in general and putting his pay as more of like a cameo than a kind of supporting role in the film. And then this was also around the time that he started his push against Whedon, the studio, Hamada, etc.
If you want the juicy details on that, go listen to our Justice League and Zack Snyder Justice League episodes. In August 2020, it was reported that Ben Affleck would also be returning as Batman in the Flash film, so 2 Batmans. Muschietti was excited for this, saying that Ben Affleck's Bruce brought an imposing presence along with a vulnerability, additionally citing his relationship with Barry being a major emotional point, as both characters lost their mothers to violence. He also pointed out that it would be nice to have the main DCU Batman appear before introducing the alternate timeline Keaton Batman, which just makes me want to scream, because, we haven't seen Batman at all since Justice League, and they're finally getting him back years after Justice League, only to sideline him for the 70-year-old man from 30 years ago. You finally got Batfleck back, the thing that people have been asking for, to bring some fucking consistency and continuity to this shit. You've got your Batman back, and he's not in the movie that much. Not really. Most of the Batman in this film is Michael Keaton. It could have just been an alternate Ben Affleck. Or fucking Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who played Thomas Wayne in Batman v Superman. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan was on the record saying that he was totally interested in coming back as Thomas Wayne for this, if they were going to adapt Flashpoint. But of course, no, we're going to bring back Michael Keaton for some reason.
Honestly, too, if they had just rewritten the story to have Ben Affleck come along, 2 Batmen on the screen at the same time would have probably sold more tickets.
Yeah.
Or if they wanted to do the Thomas Wayne thing, then you can tie that back in because Barry's having his thing with his mom, and then Bruce can have his thing with his dad. Because in Flashpoint, his dad writes Bruce a letter, and then he gives it to him.
Yeah, that's a great fucking idea. And you're right. 2 Batmen together on the screen?
That would have been awesome.
Put that in your fucking Super Bowl ad.
2 Batmen playing badminton. Or badminton.
It sounds like something the fucking Riddler would say. Barbara Muschietti in an interview would say that she was somewhat surprised that Affleck had agreed to return after all the headlines and stories about him having a hard time playing Batman. But she would go on to say that he was in a place in his life now where he could enjoy playing the character as opposed to before, where he was going through a lot. And I emphasize again, it is a fucking shame that this couldn't have happened years ago. I mean, he had shit going on outside of his professional life that was affecting him, but like, Justice League's production certainly didn't help.
No.
If they had just treated him better in the first place, they treated everybody on that movie better in the first place, we wouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. I'm pretty confident he would have stuck around. Maybe not directed the Solo movie, because he dropped out of that before Justice League, but still.
At least, like, minor roles like this. Cameos or kind of secondary character roles.
Exactly. The whole time this series was ongoing, and I was watching these films, not for the show, but like when they originally were happening, I could feel the void. I could feel the absence of not having a Batman or a Superman. Like, I watched Shazam and I liked that end scene, but I was like conscious of the fact that Superman was not really there. And it's like they mentioned Batman in a bunch of these movies and we never fucking see him again until now, until The Flash. And that is fucking terrible if you're doing a shared universe.
Trying to think of a funny comparison to the MCU.
It would be like if Iron Man didn't show up after the Avengers 1 until Spider-Man Homecoming. You know, like it's just like it would be like a fucking huge gap. But they would make references to Iron Man, but they would never show him. You've got a fucking gaping hole at the center of your universe. 2 of them. You're missing your Superman and your Batman. And only now are you trying to put a Batman into place, and it's not even the main fucking guy, even though you got him back. Anyway, at DC's fandom in 2020, Barbara Muschietti gave some hints about the movie, saying, quote, "It's a ride. It's going to be fun and exciting, and there are a lot of DC characters in it." Oof. We'll talk about that. Flash is the superhero of this film because he's the bridge between all of these characters and timelines. And in a way, it restarts everything and doesn't forget anything. Horseshit, it restarts nothing, but we will talk about that later. In October 2020, Billy Crudup was in talks to reprise his role as Henry Allen from Justice League, but in the end, Crudup would have to be replaced with Ron Livingston due to scheduling conflicts. Maybe it's a hot take, but I think Ron Livingston is better than Billy Crudup.
I feel like I didn't see enough of Billy Crudup to say if he was... Because he was into, like, what, a couple scenes in Justice League? I don't know.
That's fair. I'm not saying he's a bad actor or anything, I just really like Ron Livingston.
They look remarkably similar. I think if you didn't tell me that it was a
No,
different...
they don't. What are you talking about?
I don't know, I thought they looked kind of similar in the role. I don't know.
Dude, hold on. Alright, I take it back. You were right.
I think it's the eyebrows.
Yeah, it is. It is the eyebrows. I never realized. I take it all back. I'm sorry. At this point, it was still unconfirmed if Kiersey Clemons would reprise her role as Iris from Justice League, which didn't even end up in Justice League. That was cut, and it only remained in the Snyder Cut. And also in October, the film's release date was changed once more, moving from June 3rd to November 4th, 2022, due to the pandemic. And in 2021, the door was officially shut on Ray Fisher returning as Cyborg, after reports emerged that Cyborg's role had been written out of the film after Ray Fisher had publicly blasted Hamada, Whedon, everybody else, saying that he'd never work on any production associated with him.
Publicly blasted made me laugh, I don't know why.
Ass blast.
To round out the cast, it was revealed in February that Sasha Calle would be playing Supergirl. Before this, she was best known for her role in the soap opera The Young and the Restless, for which she won a Daytime Emmy. Did not know that.
Yeah, I guess they just have lower standards at the Daytime Emmys. That's a mean thing to say, I'm sorry. The Deadline article that broke the news also details that the film's auditions and chemistry reads were all done over Zoom. I know the pandemic was still at its peak at this point in production, but that must have fucking sucked for all the actors. To have to do all your chemistry reads and auditions over his fucking Zoom call.
I'm not an actor, but I just feel like, there's something completely different between being face to face with someone in the room and then like talking over Zoom or whatever web speaking service that they're using. But there's definitely just some things that you can't recreate over computer.
Yeah, I would argue acting is one of the most crucial things you couldn't do with a computer, as we're all finding out in these past few years.
Okay, now I need you two to kiss. Just start kissing your webcams, I guess? Rachel Zegler also auditioned for the role, as well as Bruna Marquezine, who we'll see in next week's film. It was also revealed that Kaye had signed a multi-picture deal for the role of Supergirl.
This must have really stung in hindsight. Well, it must have stung for Rachel Zegler, too, to be stuck in Shazam 2 instead of playing Supergirl. But for Kaye, I mean, because before the movie even came out, everybody knew that this wasn't going to lead anywhere. Like, you signed a multi-picture deal to play Supergirl, and then Gunn and Safran came in after that, and it's like, fuck. They're going to reset everything. I'm not going to get those multi-pictures that I signed up for.
Especially because she's Supergirl. Like, Rachel Zegler was an original character, so, I mean, if she didn't see the writing on the wall, that maybe she wouldn't come back.
Yeah, I mean, it might have sucked for Zegler to not get the Supergirl role, but in the long term, she was spared the grief of having to know that she's not only not going to be Supergirl, but be replaced with a completely different Supergirl 3 fucking years later.
Later that year, it would be revealed that Michael Shannon would be reprising his role as General Zod, and in February 2022, we would learn that Tamura Morrison would be back as Thomas Curry. The film's original ending featured Supergirl and Keaton's Batman on the courthouse steps with Barry, but then after reshoots would also feature the two of them with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Henry Cavill's Superman. This was also cut with a third ending shot with George Clooney solely appearing, reprising his role as Batman for Batman and Robin. Reading that just enrages me because they're like, yeah, so we have Henry Cavill's Superman, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, yeah, Michael Keaton's Batman, yeah, the most iconic character from this franchise, not Ben Affleck's Batman.
Yeah, like what the fuck? It'd be one thing to have Keaton as the Elseworld, alternate timeline guy, but it's like you already got Affleck back, not to beat a fucking dead horse. I've already been complaining about it, but it's like in the second version of this ending that they shot, not only did they get Henry Cavill back, because I believe this was after they had shot the cameo for Black Adam, they fucking have the Trinity from Justice League, but they're gonna stick this guy in here who's not... Yeah, no, I can't even articulate the rage. It's such a fucking moronic decision.
I guess it makes sense if you're considering the way that the movie ends, which we'll probably talk about more later, but...
No, it doesn't! It doesn't! This is where we disagree! It doesn't fucking make any sense with how the movie ends. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. I think we've been arguing about this since last night.
Gunn and Safran would later say that the version with Cavill and Gadot was cut because they didn't want to mislead audiences with the idea that those two would be moving forward as those characters in the new franchise. They still wanted the same idea though, so they asked themselves who the most ridiculous actor they could possibly bring in would be, landing on George Clooney, who was surprisingly game for it. And despite his appearance being cut, Cavill would make another $250,000 from his 2 days of reshoots. So from this and Black Adam, he's made $500,000 for probably 3 days of work, 4 days of work.
Good for him.
And once again, Ezra Miller's commitments to Fantastic Beasts 3 would end up delaying things immensely. Cameras didn't start rolling until April 2021, over 2 years after they had most recently planned to shoot. But of course, this wouldn't be the only way in which Ezra Miller would create trouble for the film.
Yes.
Okay, get ready to read 3 pages.
Okay, so we've hinted at this before now, but Ezra Miller is all sorts of fucked up and would prove to be a giant headache for Warner Brothers. And I'm going to quickly, but not that quickly, go through the highlights of some of their worst actions. On April 6, 2020, a video surfaced online that showed Miller strangling and throwing a woman to the ground in a bar in Iceland. Miller's representative would tell the press that Miller was baited by a group of teens about MMA skills, and that the choking wasn't actually choking but a, quote, spontaneous reaction.
Didn't they also say it was a chokehold or something?
They said that Miller went for the collarbone, which I don't know what that means or how that makes any fucking difference. I'm getting a lot of information here, by the way, from one source, primarily, which is a Vanity Fair article titled Ezra Miller's, quote, Messiah Delusions, Inside the Flash Star's Dark Spiral. And we'll talk about those delusions in a minute. Apparently, this was the second time Miller got into an altercation while in Iceland, but this is the one that blew up, obviously, because of the video.
I'm just being baited by a group of teens about MMA skills.
It sounds like the most fucking made-up excuse of all time. It sounds like something a child would say when they're embarrassed. One of the people in Miller's entourage in Iceland was Jasper Youngbear, a man in his 50s who Miller had hired to be his spiritual advisor. The article calls him a medicine man, which I'm pretty sure is not okay, so I'm not going to be calling him that. He's a spiritual advisor. A source close to Miller would share details about Jasper Youngbear, saying, quote, Jasper was telling Ezra that he wasn't part of the movement, he was the movement. That he was the next Messiah and that the Freemasons were sending demons out to kill him. He'd talk about the metaverse and the medicine and how they're the Messiah and what his work is here. They say their spiritual practice is to be among the people, which means party. So when in Iceland, he was out non-stop. His favorite were raves, where he'd go on benders for 2 or 3 days at a time. Jesus. Ezra Miller is misgendered here in the quotes from the article. So, not our fault. I'm not going to change the quote because that's unethical. Anyway, 2 years after this, January 2022, Miller posts a video on Instagram threatening a Ku Klux Klan chapter in Beulahville, North Carolina, saying, quote, should I do an Ezra Miller impression? I should, right?
I don't even know how he speaks.
Look, if y'all want to die, I suggest just killing yourselves with your own guns, okay? Otherwise, keep doing exactly what you're doing right now. And you know what I'm talking about. Then, we'll do it for you. If that's what you really want, this is not a joke, and even though I do recognize myself to be a clown, please trust me and take this seriously. The Southern Poverty Law Center reports that there's no knowledge of Klan activities in Beulahville, North Carolina, so I don't know what the fuck Miller was talking about. It's an unusual thing for anybody to post, let alone a big Hollywood celebrity, but the reason why this is especially noteworthy is that Ezra Miller is a huge gun nut who lives on their own farm up in rural Vermont. People close to Miller would recount what it was like at their house, saying that they would pull up to meet friends with an assault rifle in the car's center console, or that Miller would burn sage out of the barrel of an AR-15 while singing and chanting.
I like that one.
Yeah. Miller would go on road trips while armed, wearing a Kevlar vest. And in a different article, it's reported that for at least a year, Miller had supposedly been paranoid about the KKK following them around, which, makes sense when your spiritual advisor is telling you that the Freemasons are sending demons out to kill you. It is nuts. And it's also worth mentioning, because we're talking about the gun stuff, Vermont is the only state, I believe ever, to not even require a concealed carry permit. So it's very lax with gun laws. After the Instagram video came out, Miller's friends would lock the actor's guns in a safe that they couldn't open on their own. Some would report that their mother was involved in locking the guns away. And after that, there's a quote here. Quote, we got there, and there was a big bow and arrow cocked on the table facing the door. Ezra was lying face down on the floor. There's always people in the house, and there was just nobody there but Ezra, sort of drunk, alone with a bow and arrow, because the other people had taken the guns and locked them away, and Ezra was freaking out about it. Also worth noting, Ezra Miller's character, and we need to talk about Kevin, murders his classmates with a bow and arrow, and supposedly it is the same bow and arrow that they took from set after production wrapped. Before we move on to the next major incident, I really want to go back to the spiritual advisor. There's a girl, young woman now, Dakota Iron Eyes, Native American activist. She was a leader in the protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline, said to be an obsession of Miller's, with one person close to him saying, quote, Ezra's Jesus and Tocotta's an apocalyptic Native American spider goddess, and their union is supposed to bring about the apocalypse. And that's the real reason everyone is so opposed to them being together. Now, this is, of course, in reference to the fact that Dakota Iron Eyes is like 18 years old now. She was fucking 12 years old when they met, and Ezra Miller was 23. Iron Eyes' mother would paraphrase Miller's stories, saying, quote, they say there's some kind of messiah, and they're going to lead an indigenous revolution. She would also say that Miller would weaponize their gender identity, explaining, quote, if somebody pisses off Ezra, they're transphobic or a transphobic Nazi. Because we're trying to protect our daughter, and we're trying to point out what Ezra's done to harm our daughter, now we're transphobic, quote. It's worth noting that Ezra Miller is not Native American. At all. Fucking 0%. There's a shitload more in this article about their farm or compound or whatever, and how they have an obsession with like Native American imagery. But this episode's already going to be long enough, so I'm not going to get any further into the actors' fetishization of those cultures. But in June 2022, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Court would issue a temporary restraining order against Miller on behalf of Iron Eyes. The parents claiming that Miller had caused bruises on her body and that Miller had groomed and manipulated her over the years. And again, they had met when she was 12 and Miller was 23. Miller had flown her out to the premiere of Fantastic Beasts. I'm not saying there was any, like, statutory rape or anything. I have no idea. Law enforcement were unable to locate Miller to serve the restraining order, and a few days later, in response, Miller would post images on Instagram taunting the police and the court system for not being able to find them. They would, of course, quickly delete the posts, but this is like real supervillain behavior. They're going around strangling people, they're a gun nut, they're taunting the police, and they're on the run.
This is like what I imagined of Jared Leto.
And in March 2022, there was a whole series of events that happened in Hawaii. Miller goes there, they get involved with the police in a bunch of small altercations, filming people at gas stations, loitering, arguing with people in public, just general, like, harassment. Eventually, Miller's invited to live with a couple in a hostel after meeting them at a farmer's market in the city of Hilo. After that, the actor would be charged with disorderly conduct and harassment at a bar during a karaoke night because they didn't like some of the fellow patrons singing Shallow from A Star Is Born. You know, Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper. I haven't seen it, but...
Well, how the turntables.
Fair enough.
I also haven't seen it, though, so...
Fuck! Miller filmed the incident from their end of things, claiming that they did so the footage could be sold as, quote, NFT crypto art.
Oh, of course.
We'll come back to that. That's a very 2023 thing. And 3 days after this incident where Miller is charged with disorderly conduct, the couple that the actor had been living with were granted a restraining order claiming that Miller had threatened them, stole the husband's wallet and the wife's passport, all during the same night the karaoke incident occurred. The allegation involved Miller saying, quote, "I will bury you and your slut wife." Again, just fucking psychopathic supervillain shit. And a month after that, still in Hawaii, Miller was arrested again in a different city for throwing a chair after being told to leave a private party. The chair hit a woman who's 26 years old, leaving a giant cut on her forehead.
She probably deserved it.
Back on the farm, Miller was housing a mother and her 3 young kids that they had met in Hilo a month prior. They had flown from Hawaii to Miller's farm. According to the father and others, guns and ammo were easily accessible to the kids. One witness stated that they, quote, "saw Miller blow marijuana smoke in the baby's face," I shouldn't laugh at that, "and use their arm to waft more smoke in the baby's direction."
So I saw a quote that said that someone had seen pictures of one of the babies chewing on like a bullet that was left out.
Yeah, supposedly the 1-year-old had a loose bullet in their mouth that they were playing with. Rolling Stone would report that Miller had been running a massive unlicensed weed operation in addition to everything else, by the way. Which,
of course.
Yeah, I mention here because it ties into blowing weed smoke in a baby's face. And while Vermont State Police showed up to serve the mother with an emergency care order, they were nowhere to be found, with Miller claiming that the family hadn't lived there in months. A Vermont caseworker tasked with observing and watching the family saw the mother posting pictures of Miller's farm that contradicted the story, so she and her kids were still living there and Miller was just lying to the police. In August, only 4 months after the incident with the family, Miller was charged with felony burglary for breaking into someone's house to steal booze. They would claim that this was an old childhood friend and that they had an unspoken agreement that Miller could come in and take wine for cooking. And on the day of the trial, January 2023, like 5 fucking months before the movie's supposed to come out, they would plead guilty to trespassing and only trespassing as part of a plea deal. The rest of it got dropped. All of this happened at most a year before The Flash came out. And there's way more shit that I have not discussed that is in the Vanity Fair article and a bunch of other articles. There's also like an alleged cult in Iceland, another restraining order involving a 12-year-old boy in Massachusetts. The point is there's no shortage of things that this actor was doing that could jeopardize the movie's success.
It sounds like after the first thing that happened, they should have like put Ezra like in therapy or like something clearly is wrong with their head here. I don't know.
I agree. This strikes me as a complete mental breakdown.
Yeah, something.
Especially that it's all happening in like a year and a half.
In one of the articles about Grant Morrison working with Ezra, they pointed out, like, this isn't the person that I worked with. I don't know if Ezra's going through something, but, like, this is not the person that I was working with. I hope that they can get some help. So, clearly to other people, too, that something is not right with Ezra. It's kind of sad, but also, I don't know. You're an actor, you can get help, I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, we should have empathy for others, but my empathy can only go so far when you're doing all this fucking shit that's hurting other people. Mm-hmm. And also, you're rich. I will always have less empathy for people who have money.
That's because you're a transphobic Nazi.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's another thing in the Vanity Fair article, is that anytime that the actor was arrested or confronted in any way, faced any kind of resistance, they would always throw out shit like that, which is why I made sure to put it in here. Bottom line, maybe the most problematic lead, at least as close to a film's release as possible. Maybe Jonathan Majors is the exception, because they had to fucking redo the whole movie because of him. The whole pivot to a different Avengers film. But bottom line, Ezra Miller is a problem.
So, after all of this, how in the hell do you market this thing? Easy. You pretend the star doesn't exist and spend a shitload of money. Warner Brothers reframed the trailers, merchandising, and advertising around the film itself, and the return of Keaton's Batman and Kaye's Supergirl instead of Flash. One executive would tell The Hollywood Reporter, they are spending huge. This is a massive campaign. Miller put out an apology for their behavior, but after that, they completely disappeared during the campaign leading up to the movie's release, with an exception made for the premiere, in which they just posed for photos. Something that was uncharacteristically helpful during this time was the SAG-AFTRA strike in 2023, which meant that Ezra Miller couldn't promote the movie in any way, but also that co-stars wouldn't have to deal with awkward questions on late-night shows or press interviews. A rival executive would tell The Hollywood Reporter, it has hurt everyone equally, but in their case, it hurts them less. It's like the silver lining of the situation for them.
Yeah, right, the only film that was positively affected by the strikes.
The studio would also court celebrities to attend advanced screenings and to unofficially promote the film. Stephen King said, I got an advanced screening of The Flash today. As a rule, I don't care a lot for superhero movies, but this one is special. It's heartfelt, funny, and eye-popping. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure he's being totally genuine here. Let's just ignore the fact that Muschietti directed the two-part adaptation of King's novel, It. And also, according to Muschietti, the two of them are friends. And also the fact that Warner Brothers is the company that's almost always responsible for licensing his novels for film and television. Totally no bias there. They definitely didn't reach out to him and say, hey, can you do us a favor?
According to Barbara Muschietti, in the case of Tom Cruise, he called us, talked for 15 minutes, praising Andy, praising the film, and it just feels very good because we really work very hard to make these movies.
Yeah, and again, I totally believe this. Let's just ignore the fact that Tom Cruise would sign an exclusive development deal with Warner Brothers Discovery just 6 months after this movie came out. This definitely wasn't a I scratch your back, you scratch mine situation.
You scratch my balls, I'll scratch yours. New saying?
That's pretty good. I'm gonna start saying that.
James Gunn would continue to emphasize that The Flash would reset everything and lead directly into the DCU, saying that the film was fucking amazing. Like, it's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. Andy Muschietti did an amazing job, and I'm really excited for everybody to see it.
We talked about this last week. He's a bullshitter. He's just trying to sell the DC brand. That's his fucking job now. He's going to say every single one of these 4 movies this year in 2023 are amazing. I think maybe a lesser degree this one, because he did hire Muschietti for Brave and the Bold. And he also hired Christina Hodson to write it, which we've only just recently learned. But it's hard to judge Muschietti and Hodson when the film has gone through so many different writers and directors. So it's possible that whatever their contributions were, you know what I'm trying to say?
It's hard to tell how much creative control they actually had.
Right. This thing is a fucking Frankenstein that's been in development on and off for like 18 years. It's gone through so many different hands, so many different visions, and by the time Muschietti and Hodson are touching it, it's unclear how much of the film is really theirs. I mean, more so Hodson. Muschietti is the fucking director. He's going to be there the whole time they're shooting. But what I'm trying to say, I guess, is like, I know Gunn is bullshitting. He's clearly bullshitting because that's his job, is just to sell these 4 movies as the franchise is dying before the next one can step into its place. But he wouldn't have hired the 2 of these people to work on Batman if he didn't have some confidence in them working on a project that isn't mired with all the bullshit that The Flash has.
Yeah, it's even brought up earlier in that article about the different endings for the movie, because they're saying, like, even just going through the filming, it's going through 3 different regime changes because they have 3 different endings from 3 different heads. So there's definitely probably some level of fuckery there from the studio. Yeah, I mean, I can't put it fully on them.
No, I can't either.
There was an ad at the Super Bowl that year, and over $14 million worth of commercials during that year's NBA playoffs. All in all, Warner Brothers spent over $150 million on marketing alone, which is probably, half the budget of the movie? I guess we'll find out later.
Yeah, the fact that the one executive told The Hollywood Reporter, like, emphasizing, like, this is a massive campaign, I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer to, like, $200 million. When this movie was coming out, I fucking saw marketing everywhere. It was inescapable. And they were definitely pushing Keaton's Batman the most out of any part of this movie, because how the fuck could you market this on Ezra Miller when all you have to do is change the channel and see mugshots of them on the TV?
This is where Shazam 2's marketing budget went.
Yeah, seriously. Like, we talked about the fact that, like, we don't remember seeing anything for that. It's totally possible they siphoned all the marketing from Shazam 2 to put here. Especially because, they came out 3 months apart or something like that? There is one more way in which the film was uniquely marketed that dates it horribly. A way in which Warner Brothers would make cinema history. Forget the Speed Force, it's all about the blockchain, baby. The same day The Flash hit theaters, Warner Brothers made sure to let everyone know that the film would also be available for purchase as an NFT. Every purchase came with character art with their own levels of rarity, special features, and augmented reality collectibles. Quoting an article on the cryptocurrency news site Decrypt, the Mystery Edition will cost $35 and come with one of 4 pieces of key art: Prime Barry, Young Barry, Batman, or Supergirl, alongside one of the 4 dynamic menu interfaces that will be revealed after purchase. The Mystery Edition's limited to 10,000 copies. Meanwhile, the Premium Edition will retail for $100, limited to 2,000 copies, featuring one of 2 pieces of motion art, featuring the Flash, Supergirl, and Batman together, or Dark Flash, alongside all 4 explorable dynamic menu interfaces. Owners of the Flash Web 3 movie experience will also receive a voucher that can be redeemed to claim a DC3 Super Power Pack NFT from the DC NFT Marketplace. Yeah, that was a thing. Let's not forget. Let's not let them off the hook for this. Quote, each Super Power Pack contains a randomly selected trio of digital comics with rarity levels ranging from common to legendary.
Is it like actual comics that you can read, or is it just pictures of them?
I think you can read them.
God, I hope so.
But, to do that, you'd have to spend at least $35, and you wouldn't get to pick what the comics are. I just think this is hilarious. I would never put it past the comic industry to do something shitty and scummy. Like, they would absolutely embrace NFTs. They do shit today like blind bags. They just bring fucking gambling in. Ever since the 90s, there's been the speculation market and stuff that they've completely catered to. Variant covers. Anyway, not to get too off track. Quote, Warner Brothers and Illuvio are calling this the first time that a major studio film is being released via NFT, at the same time it hits traditional digital platforms. Possibly the last. Illuvio co-founder and CEO Michelle Munson said, this is a chance for DC fans to own a piece of motion picture history.
I don't even remember hearing about this when it happened. So clearly
you don't?
It was... No.
Oh, I remember this, dude. I was like, yeah, this is the cherry on top of the shit sundae. Not only is everything else going on, but they're embracing NFTs. They're making an NFT movie.
They could have just made this Mystery Edition like the fucking normal Blu-ray instead of just, it's an NFT.
I also like the part where they mention motion art as if that's like anything special.
It's a GIF.
Yeah, are we talking about a GIF? Like, we're talking about the equivalent of like a holographic trading card? You know what I mean? One of those trading cards where if you look at it from 2 angles, it's like different art. Like, what are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here? And that website is still up. You can go to the DC NFT Marketplace. You can go to the Web3 experience, and I don't think you could still buy it. And I think it's very telling that this is where we're at with this franchise. If you recall, Thomas, in Man of Steel, we discussed an alternate reality game, an ARG.
Yes.
Internet users had to team up to decode radio frequencies and piece together images to get screensavers and to look at the trailer and to tease at Zod and stuff. That was creative. That was fun. It brought the community together. And 10 years later, in the franchise's dying breaths, they're promoting these fucking crypto scams as a direct part of the movie.
You gotta strike while the iron's hot, you know?
How the times have changed.
They have to code whole websites to do the Superman one. They just gotta send some PNGs to the blockchain.
Yeah, no, you're right. Why put effort into anything when you could just grift people?
And now we move on to the state of movies, DC, and the characters at release. Other movies releasing around this time included Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Fast X, The Little Mermaid, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Elemental, Asteroid City, Indiana Jones 5, and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And seeing the list of movies that this movie's going up against, it's pretty obvious to see why it would make no fucking money between all these other blockbuster movies. A lot of these movies would be competing for the Flash's audience, and I'm sure that the fact that there was a reboot on the horizon did not help it at all. It seems like they probably just kind of sent this out to die.
Yeah, which is insane considering the amount of marketing they already fucking spent, and also the fact that they've already delayed the film so many times. Like, what's one more delay? You couldn't have pushed this a few more months?
They couldn't because Blue Beetle came out in August.
Fuck, you're right. You're right. You know, you've got a fucking MCU movie, Guardians 3, that's gonna fucking sell tickets. Fast and the Furious, a live-action Disney remake, and those always do stupid well for some idiot reason. Animated Pixar movie, Spider-Verse 2, a Transformers movie, the first Indiana Jones movie in like 15 fucking years, a Mission Impossible movie, and even for like the art house people, you've got a Wes Anderson. It's like, what the fuck were you doing? Literally everyone who was going to go to the movies already had a movie they were going to go see, and it wasn't going to be The Flash.
It's kind of like releasing the first Shazam a month before Endgame.
And this is all not to mention the fact that there's all this controversy surrounding the star. So it's like, not only are people aware of the reboot and they have all these other movies they could choose from, but you're also checking social media and you're seeing bullshit about Ezra Miller everywhere.
But in the comics realm, DC released a 3-part prequel comic titled The Flash, The Fastest Man Alive, with Part 1 hitting shelves in April. There was also a new run of The Flash under the Dawn of DC banner that would begin in September 2023.
Why did they wait until September? The movie was already out for months.
I don't know. They did the same thing with Shazam. They started his run in like July or something.
I'm sure it's a big machine, and like with Shazam, maybe it's a similar issue for both of these where like the movies were delayed and parts of the process were delayed and other parts weren't. I don't know.
In the comics, it's a lot more difficult because they write a lot of stories around big events. So like if something big happens in an event, they kind of have to move fast and get that series out or that comic issue out. Otherwise it's going to be way far behind in the times. Like if Batman dies in a big event or something and then it comes back and they don't mention it, or like they mention it too late because the book got delayed, then it doesn't make any sense. There's a lot more variables going on, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, you're right. There's a lot of moving parts.
And in other DC media, DC released just one more animated film for 2023 after the previous two that we discussed in the last episode, which was Justice League Warworld. It was another entry in the Tomorrowverse in which the Justice League go to Warworld and battle with Mongol. On TV, we had the animated series My Adventures with Superman, which debuted on July 7th, 2023. A show set in a new universe, it follows Clark, Lois, and Jimmy as they deal with threats while working at the Daily Planet.
I love how that plot synopsis is just every Superman story.
Basically, yeah, I was reading it and I was like, I guess, yeah, I want to have a description of it, but whatever, sure.
I liked that show. I don't think I ever went back to check out season 2, but I liked what I saw.
I think there might even be a season 3 by now.
Jesus.
And there's going to be spin-offs.
That always happens to me. I just tune out if it's a show I forget or don't care about, and it's like I'll be talking to someone at work and it'll be like, yeah man, have you seen Big Mouth season 8? And I'm like, wait, what? In my head that show just has one season and I've just been like flashbanged.
The 4th season of the Harley Quinn animated series debuted on July 27th. And there was also the release of the show Gotham Knights on the CW, which is not related to the game, although the story is kind of similar. The premise is, in the wake of Bruce Wayne's death, his adopted son, Turner Hayes, forges an...
Turner Hayes?
It gets worse. Forges an unlikely alliance with runaways Harper and Cullen Rowe and the criminal Duella, when they are all framed for the murder by the Gotham City Police Department and District Attorney Harvey Dent. The four of the youths attempt to clear their names and find out who really killed Bruce Wayne, with help from Turner's friend Stephanie Brown and Turner's classmate Carrie Kelly, who is secretly the superhero Robin. The mystery of who framed them soon leads to the Court of Owls. Over time, they evolve into becoming Gotham City's new protectors, known as Gotham Knights. So, first of all, the main character of this, Turner Hayes, not real. The other one's all real, but they focus on a fake character who has never been in the comics. And, you know, it's not like Bruce has any other adopted sons in the comics.
Yeah. It's not like he doesn't have an entire extended adopted family that fights crime with him.
Additionally, I don't think this is even connected to any of the other CW shows. I don't know why they made this. I don't know who they thought was going to watch it. I'm assuming that DC was like, you cannot use any of the Robins for this because this sounds fucking stupid. You can use Carrie Kelly.
Yeah, I buy that. I mean, it sounds like that thing that was going on in the 2000s where they wouldn't let people use Batman in anything. You weren't allowed to use him in TV shows, which is why he never shows up in Teen Titans.
Yeah, this did not last long. I think it lasted like 13 seasons. Lasted 13 episodes or something, and immediately got canceled. I don't think anyone watched it. I heard it was really bad.
Man, I just went to the Wikipedia page to find out why they had to use these weirdos, and
What, you want to watch it now?
No. I'm just so confused.
You know it's good when the main character doesn't have a Wikipedia page, the actor.
Okay. And so now we finally get into the plot synopsis and discussion. After helping Batman and Wonder Woman stop a robbery in Gotham City, the Flash revisits his childhood home where he lived with his parents before his father's wrongful imprisonment for his mother's murder. On the day of her death, Nora, his mother, sent Henry, his father, to the grocery store for some canned food she forgot to buy, leaving her alone in the kitchen where she was killed by an unidentified assailant. Overcome by emotions, Barry accidentally uses the Speed Force to travel back in time to earlier that day. Returning to the present, he discusses the incident with Bruce, who warns of the unintended consequences of time travel. Despite this, Barry travels to the day of Nora's death and places a can of food in Nora's grocery cart to prevent Henry from leaving the house. As he returns to the present, Barry is attacked by an unknown speedster and emerges in an alternate 2013 where Nora is alive. He encounters his parents and past self, realizing this is the day he was struck by lightning and obtains his powers. It's a lot in a little. Okay. Opening scene, but before that, I got notes on the logos. I thought that was cool. They do like a lightning bolt thing where they go through the different logos of Warner Brothers throughout the years and the different logos of DC throughout the years. I like it. I'm always a sucker for when companies will change their logo for a movie. Warner Brothers will do that sometimes, or they'll do like The Matrix, but it'll be like green.
Yeah. Variants, if you will.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for that. I like it. It makes a movie feel more special, even if the movie sucks. And I'm also shocked at how quickly the movie starts, which I know, haha, it's The Flash. But like right after the logos, boom, we're right into the opening. There's no preamble, no opening credits. No opening credits at all, which caught me off guard.
I liked the opening.
Me too.
It was a kind of like a slice of life vibe.
I think it's the best part of the movie. I like Barry just doing his thing. I didn't know Alfred was in this at all, by the way.
I forgot he was in it.
And it's the first of many appearances where I'm like, oh shit, this person's in this? Mm-hmm. I was confused by the yellow lightning at first, which the movie does eventually, not directly state, but like you can see visually it's because of his suit. Later he's not wearing the suit and the lightning is blue. I don't like it. I mean, I like the yellow lightning. I just wish they didn't try to change it. You already had the blue lightning, you should have just stuck with it. Tying it to his suit felt kind of weird.
I think it was kind of like a retcon. That's what I got.
Yeah, no. They're definitely trying to retcon it without actually retconning it. I also prefer the blue lightning because the CW Flash uses yellow lightning. So this would be a way to keep the two feeling a little more different from each other. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the intro is great up until the actual title crawl. Like no other notes up until that point.
Did you think that maybe because we both thought that Flash was definitely written better in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that the one in Whedon's Justice League was like way too quirky? What did you think of specifically like this opening scene? Is really, he felt just a bit too quirky for me, because the rest of the movie he's not, because that role is relegated to younger Barry.
I'm gonna call him Barry 2.
Barry 2
because it's less syllables. I liked it. I feel like it was definitely toned down from Whedon when he's got his acronym for the lunch order and he's asking the girl to toss him the candy bar and he's bantering with Alfred. I liked it. It never crossed a line for me into the point of being obnoxious. I guess one thing I will say that I don't like about the opening is like going back to the suit. It is ugly.
Yeah.
He looks like a fruit roll-up.
It's weird that they focus on making him so bulky because the Flash is not one who really needs to be that bulky. He's built for speed.
I didn't write it in my notes, but you saying that did remind me. I should have wrote his traps were like distracting. It was weird how well sculpted his abs were too. It's just like I know he can regenerate, but like that's not the same as building muscle. Like new. You know what I mean? Like, I agree. They definitely bulked him up with that suit.
But yeah, the whole opening sequence where I like that they kind of play up they kind of make like a meta joke about the Flash being on cleanup duty and basically doing citizen roundup and like rescuing people because that's what he's relegated to a lot of the time. So even he's kind of poking fun of like, I know I'm the janitor of the Justice League. And then while he's doing that, Batman's stopping the bad guys. He's catching babies and putting them in microwaves.
I know people make fun of the stuff with the babies. Before we get to that, Batfleck returns.
Yes.
It's great. His suit's ugly. I don't know why he's got the weird, like... It looks like the thing when you buy a model and you snap out the pieces and there's just the plastic frame left.
Yeah, like the mold or whatever.
Yeah, right. And that he's just got that plastered across his chest. I don't know what the fuck is happening there.
Yeah, and his suit looks like pajamas. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, it looks really weird. It looks really bad. But Ben Affleck's Batman is back. I'm very happy to see him again. The tone is completely different from Zack Snyder's Justice League or BVS. I don't give a shit. It's Flash's movie. It makes sense that the tone is going to shift more to fit Flash. I liked him. It was nice to see him again. All of his scenes I enjoyed. Yeah, that's all the notes I have on Batman. Next, I want to talk about the nursery.
He had another thing on his costume. I did not like it. It made me uncomfortable as they showed a shot from underneath Batman, and the nose part of his suit went down and it went under, and then it just had holes in it. It didn't show the whole bottom of his nose. And I was like, something about that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't know why.
I don't like that either.
Yeah, it was weird. Like that. Everything about the Batman, like the chase scene, the CGI looked really good for it, like the action looked good for it. And honestly, when they announced that Andy Muschietti was going to be the director, and like after watching this, I feel like I have more understanding of why, because I feel like he did Batman really good in this.
Yes, I agree with that. I do think Muschietti actually did a great job with the blocking and the choreography and stuff. I don't agree that the CGI looked good. I think largely it looks like visual diarrhea. I think it looks terrible.
I was mostly just talking about like the Batman chase stuff.
Yeah, it looked fake.
Well, some of it looked bad, some of it looked okay.
I thought it looked fake. They shot with a real motorcycle. You know, I remember texting that to you, I think.
Yeah, they crashed it.
Yeah, they crashed the bat cycle into I remember that. No, I agree. I've seen the It movies, and the second one's okay. First one's good, but like, why would you give this guy Batman? And it's like, okay, this is a nice little showcase of why you would give this guy Batman. Like the stuff here and then the stuff later with Keaton. I get it. I'm still not completely sold on him being the director, but I can see, at least with the action scenes with Batman, that he has proven himself to be capable of doing it.
I did like his scenes later, though, with him and Barry. I don't know if we want to talk about that now. Batfleck.
I mean, we can. Let's just talk about it now. We can go back to the nursery. I like that scene, too. I like the conversation between them in the alleyway. If that's the one you're referring to, right?
Yeah. I really like, because we clearly don't have a Robin in this universe, I feel like it's kind of a way to add like a surrogate father mentor role to Barry because his dad's in prison. So I really like their relationship in this.
Yeah, 100%. And also, if they had done what you suggested about bringing Batfleck back in time too, you've got an even bigger father angle with Thomas Wayne and shit. I like that. I like it. I guess while we're on this scene, before we go back to everything else we're skipping over here, both Bruce and Barry reference Barry time traveling in Justice League. And I had texted you saying that, oh, Zack Snyder's Justice League is canon, because Barry does not time travel in Joss Whedon's cut, the cut that was in theaters.
No.
So that makes, if only to this movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League the canon version of Justice League, which means Martian Manhunter is running around somewhere.
Fuck, I forgot about that.
Superman was wearing a black and white suit. Maybe not anymore, as we see from the CGI back of his body in that news clip in this film. But I thought it was interesting that they chose to acknowledge this director's cut that went straight to streaming as the canon version of the movie.
There was a couple scenes where I think they referenced it.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Iris is here. Iris was not in Justice League in theaters.
And later references like, did I see you a couple months ago? Because he does save her from that car crash, so.
Before we get too far removed from the nursery and stuff, I actually loved it. It looks fucking hideous, like so much of this movie, but it was so funny. It felt very comic booky, you know, like somebody tied to train tracks or something. It's like, oh no, the babies are falling out of the window.
And then there's a random dog.
Yeah.
I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah, it was really good. Like, I really enjoyed it. I was willing to look past how shitty it looked. The music during that part was distracting. It sounded exactly like John Williams's Star Wars scores. And I feel like the whole film, the composer is trying to mimic John Williams with the music. And there's no single track that sticks out to me after watching the film, but it is a good score. And I guess it makes complete sense because John Williams also wrote the score to Back to the Future.
So he's trying to emulate that, maybe.
You're absolutely trying to emulate Williams and that movie. I mean, they explicitly referenced the movie several times. And they almost got Zemeckis to direct this. So I just thought that was interesting. Normally, the superhero scores for these movies, they don't try and take that angle. You know, they don't try to emulate John Williams.
Well, Danny Elfman tried to emulate himself, if that counts.
That's true. And some of these movies actually did have Hans Zimmer. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's interesting how that contributes to the movie trying to rip off Back to the Future. We get Wonder Woman. She's fine. I think she's better here than she was in Shazam 2.
Makes more sense.
Well, that too, yeah. I like the Lasso of Truth scene.
You like it?
I did.
Uh-oh.
I know. I probably shouldn't have, but, you know, when Batman was talking and stuff, I actually found it amusing. I did like that.
I like it if it's like self-doubt. I don't really like it if it's the truth.
Yeah, no, I mean, they do kind of play fast and loose with the literal meaning of what the Lasso of Truth does for that joke, but I did like it. And we also get the opening line of today's episode, which was very funny.
I think the one last thing I have about this is what I noticed is when he's getting his food in the cafe, it's playing a song. We go through this whole like 10-minute opening scene and then he goes back to get his sandwich and it's still the same song. So it's basically saying like this whole thing happened in probably less than 5 minutes, which I thought was a neat little touch.
Yeah, he comes back before the guy's done with his sandwich and yeah. No, it was good. I liked it. We get to the scene where he's visiting his dad. We get the recast, Ron Livingston. Great actor. In the scene after Barry remembers his mom's death, he actually runs like a normal human being before shifting into that weird floaty ice skate thing he does throughout the whole film. And in the beginning of the movie, I thought it looked like absolute dog shit the first time he runs because it goes right into that like dolly zoom distorted lens into the weird ice skatey floaty thing, and it looks so fucking ridiculous. But when you actually see the build up to it, how he starts in a normal run and as time gets faster your eyes just can't keep up with the movements, it makes more sense. It just looks so jarring at the beginning. I think they just should have done what they did here and show him like starting up the run, you know. We also get our first appearance of what I've dubbed in my notes as the AI slop Hellsphere, in which we see really bad CG renditions of everything Barry just did. It looks like shit. Every time they show it, it looks like shit.
I guess I get what they were going for, especially when there's already so much CGI you have to do in this. Making this whole thing where you basically have to make a CGI model and replicate it like 50 times around him, it seems crazy, and it just seems like they could have just made it just be footage around him or something.
And I also think just the general art direction for all of these shots feels very generative AI to me. I couldn't find any proof of them using generative AI. I tried. Wikipedia says they did, but there's actually no source that says that, backing it up. But the actual like aesthetic and composition and stuff, especially when we get to the final AI slop Hellsphere scene, it just looked like something out of Mid-Journey, you know? Like someone was just like, whoa, look at these trippy visuals of these planets and spirals going inside each other, and it's like an optical, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of like had this flow where things were just moving and blending with no narrative reason in a way that reminded me of people generating AI videos, especially at like the point that this movie came out in. Like now it's so much better at faking real video, which is depressing. But back then things used to be a lot more trippy and abstract. Because that's all it was capable of doing. We get the floating head here. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
It made me laugh when it happened.
It was pretty funny. Of course, that is a callback to Thor Love and Thunder. With Heimdall's kid also has a floating head scene. Other than the horrible effects, I don't hate any of this so far.
I hated his coworkers. I wanted to punch them both in the face.
Yeah, I liked the scene where they come back later as the roommates.
Yeah, that was
funny. A good scene. My next note is about Barry 2, so if you have anything before that.
I do want to mention, I like that I believe it's in the comics too, that despite being the fastest man alive, he's always late to things. It's pretty funny and ironic.
It's good. It's a good bit. And, I mean, look, man, I don't even need to say it anymore, but the you know, I'm late for work and I'm trying to get my lunch, and then the superhero thing happens and I'm always late to work and my boss is chewing me out, and you know, there's just another superhero that reminds me of another series of movies that do that pretty well.
Steel with Shaq.
Steel. Oh yeah. Man. So we get to the time travel part. Evil Barry knocks him out of the Hellsphere.
Although we don't know that's who it is yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, it obviously is. Come on. But I mean, yeah. I kind of called that right away. Maybe it's because I've just seen so many clips of the Flash show over the years, but it's like, it's always a fucking other speedster, and like a third of the time, it's always some version of Barry. Again, talking out of my ass, I don't read the comics, but...
I did like the bait and switch there, where they think he's like, goes in, sees his mom and his dad, and he's eating food with them, and then Barry 2 walks up and he's like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was really good. The idea that he just fixed the present, and then, oh shit, no, this is actually an alternate timeline. Or, well, he's not for sure that it's an alternate timeline, which I actually like, that he's not certain about it, because this is all so new and uncharted, but I like it a lot. I didn't know that this was what the movie was. I didn't realize that most of the movie was just two Barrys doing shit together. Because they don't market it that way. None of the fucking trailers or the commercials or the advertisements featured Ezra Miller more prominently than they had to, which would mean 75% of the movie is just not shown to you at all.
Yeah.
But I actually like it. And I love how goddamn annoying Barry 2 is. Mm-hmm. And Barry acknowledges it. And that happens a few times where the script is one step ahead of me, and every time I was going to write something in my notes like, God, Barry 2 is so annoying, the script would come out and be like, yeah, Barry 2 is annoying, isn't he? Which I liked.
I wonder if it was kind of like a riff on Whedon's version.
Oh, definitely.
Where he was like turned up to 200%.
Definitely. Yes. He has that awful laugh that he does.
Dude, I don't know if I'm thinking of a show or an actual real person, but the laugh was reminding me of someone, and I was like, God, I hope this isn't someone I know in real life. But like,
I think there's a guy in SpongeBob who laughs like that.
He's like, I'm just like, oh my God, please. Every time it was like grating to my ears. So good.
I love all his slang too, the alternate timeline slang, where they're I mean, jumping ahead, they jump out of the Batwing, and Barry 2 says, "This rips dicks." Which is probably like their version of "this kicks ass."
This rips dicks. I like that they actually make the two Barrys different. I mean, they obviously are the same character at different points in his life, but there's clear differences between them, and they're not just the same character twice.
Yeah. I think they do a really good job of making them feel distinct from each other, and also, for as shitty as a lot of the movie looks, I think they do a really impressive job with the fact that you're seeing two Ezra Millers next to each other, and it's never jarring or distracting. It never looks fake. It looks really good. I did feel like when they're in his room and after he explained the situation, I don't understand why Barry should be freaking out like this about Barry 2 not getting his powers, because it's like, dude, you're the guy with powers, you could just leave. You're in an alternate timeline. Like, seeing yourself there should already be proof enough of that this isn't yours. Yeah. And when you got bumped out by that purple guy, you got bumped into another timeline or something. So whatever happens here shouldn't affect him at all. But this is another example of the script coming out ahead of it, where before I even finish writing my note, Barry says, I think that's how it works. If you don't get your powers, maybe things will get messed up. So even in the film, they do acknowledge that this might not matter, but he just wants to play it safe, which I did appreciate, that they do acknowledge it. It's like, this is all crazy shit. We don't know what causes what the implications are. Better to play it safe. And I think the spaghetti scene later is fucking genius.
I think it's just, what he's thinking is that if he goes back in the future without his powers, then I guess he wouldn't be able to go back later and then fix, so maybe it would create some sort of closed loop, I don't know.
Or he would come back without having his powers or something.
Yeah.
It's basically magic. There's really no rules to it in that sense. It's all uncharted territory.
The two Barrys go to the Central City Police Department, where Barry reenacts the event so Barry too can gain his powers. Both are struck by lightning, granting Barry 2 powers, but leaving Barry 1 without his own. As Barry 1 struggles to train his younger self on properly using his powers, the Barrys learn that General Zod is preparing to invade Earth. To fight Zod, the Barrys attempt to assemble the Justice League, but are unsuccessful. In this timeline, Diana cannot be located. Victor Scone.
Victor Scone! That's another effect of changing the timeline, is he's now a pastry.
Victor Stone has not gained his abilities yet, and Arthur Curry doesn't exist. They travel to Wayne Manor hoping to find Bruce, but they instead find an alternate version who has long retired. Bruce theorizes that altering history through time travel affects events both before and after the alteration, causing several realities to collapse into a single one. They convince Bruce to return as Batman and help them find Kal-El/Superman. I liked how they turned the idea of Barry 1 having his powers and Barry 2 not having his powers on its head, and giving Barry 2 the powers, and then somehow having the lightning take away Barry 1's powers.
Yes, I thought it was a little contrived the way they did it physically, with him turning around in the chair, and like stepping between the lightning and Barry 2. But I do love the premise, and I think they do a great job executing it throughout the film, where it's like Barry is becoming a mentor to himself. And the whole time I was kind of on edge, because I was really scared that they were going to do the trope where Barry 2 turns evil and Barry 1 won't be able to stop him because he doesn't have his powers anymore.
Oh.
I was so fucking relieved when they didn't do that. When it's like Barry 2 is actually on board with like following Barry 1's directions and becoming a hero.
Yeah, he's annoying with his powers, but yeah, he's not malicious with them.
And I actually thought it was fucking genius that he's not just annoying but destructive and all that, because this is not a Flash origin movie, but in a way it is, because they're telling their multiversal Flashpoint Light story, but at the same time with Barry 2, we are getting the things we would have seen in a Flash origin movie. Barry running through the street, burning off all his clothes and causing the car crashes and stuff and phasing through the floors. That's all the kind of stuff we didn't see that we're seeing now. They're not flashbacks, but they kind of are. And I really liked it. I thought that was very clever. They sort of get to have their cake and eat it too.
I didn't even think of that, but you're right. That's really clever. It's an origin story, but then also not an origin story at the same time.
Yeah, I really liked that. I like when he realizes he loses his powers and he does the goofy ice skating run at normal speed. And it's like, again, damn it, the movie's self-aware. The movie knows it looks stupid. Fuck, the movie's too smart for me. I completely forgot that Zod was in this.
Me too.
Like, the whole plot line of like, oh shit, this is actually Man of Steel. Like, we are in Man of Steel right now. And because of Barry, there's no Superman. That was a whole thing that I completely forgot about, because this is my first time watching it, and it's been so long since I saw any spoilers. Really interesting.
I don't remember them marketing him that much.
No, I remember seeing him in maybe the final trailer.
We also see Tamura Morrison, his little cameo.
I didn't know he was in this movie at all. I loved that. It was great. I'm always happy when I see Tamura Morrison, because the man deserves more work. He's great. Very underrated. He's just another victim of the prequels stalling or crippling an actor's career.
That's true.
There's nobody who walked away from the prequels with a better career.
George Lucas arguably made like $10 billion.
That's okay, fair enough. That's true. No actors, anyway.
There you go.
Although George was on an episode of The OC as himself. So he's technically an actor. He might have a SAG card. He might pay union dues.
I wasn't really on board with Michael Keaton returning when I first heard about it, but I liked the way that they did it, and I feel like he had a lot of fun doing it. I felt like the first scenes in the bat suit, like especially when he turns around and reveals himself in the bat suit, I felt like I saw like a twinkle in his eye that was like, I'm having fun with this.
Yeah, you could tell he was really loving the fact that he was back, and I do agree they handle it well. Like, they build up to it. If you didn't see any of the trailers and shit, you probably would think, yeah, it's gonna be Ben Affleck. This is like when Thor Ragnarok came out and they spoiled that Hulk was in it in the trailer. It's one of those situations where if you just went into the movie blind, if you kept that a secret from audiences, I think they would have enjoyed it a lot more. Although I guess in the end, people did like Keaton Batman the most out of anything in this movie anyway.
Unfortunately, they couldn't hide that in the marketing.
Oh, right. That's also true. Like, what are you going to market the movie on the back of Supergirl? Come on. Like, yeah, they were in a tough spot. We also get the scene with the roommates, which is pretty funny. We already talked about it a little bit, but, they're talking about ways in which the timeline's fucked up.
Eric Stoltz, Back to the Future. I like that Barry is trying to contact the other members of the Justice League, and there's an explanation for every one of them, or at least a pretty good guess. Like he calls Aquaman's dad. Aquaman doesn't exist. He looks up Victor. Victor's got a successful career. Sucks ass that Ray Fisher isn't actually there in a picture or anything, at least. Like it's like the back of a random football player. You can't see their face or anything. And it also is shitty because Cyborg, from what I remember, is a pretty big part of Flashpoint, which would make sense if they were adapting Flashpoint, that they would put Cyborg in the movie in a secondary role, which, they're obviously not in the movie. Going back to Keaton, I was really, again, never saw this movie before. I was really cynical about it, but I have to admit, he fucking ruled. At least in the part where he's introduced, I liked him a lot. I couldn't agree more with you. I think they did a really good job building it up. I like the scene in the kitchen, not with the needle drop. I thought that was cringe, but I did like the fight. I just don't like the needle drop. I like the spaghetti. I think the spaghetti scene is fucking genius. Like, it's like the best breakdown of time travel and all that shit that I've ever seen in a movie. I felt like they did a lot of the science speak and technical explanation pretty well in this, and without making it cliche, like saying, can you explain that like a normal person?
Yeah. And it never contradicts itself, I think, versus something like Avengers Endgame, which also did time travel and doesn't follow its own rules. Because in Avengers Endgame, they make a point of explaining this doesn't work like Back to the Future, but then it ends up working like Back to the Future in some way.
There's one thing I wanted to mention. It was the fact that it was kind of interesting that we saw that Flash was at the original Metropolis incident in the main timeline and tried to help.
Yes, I liked that too. I wish there was more of it, honestly.
Which also invalidates the Whedon cut, because in the Whedon one, he's like, I've never actually fought someone, or like, it sounds like he doesn't do anything. But here he's clearly like trying to help people. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't invalidate it, but...
I think you're right. And it was great. I wish that scene was longer. I know there are videos on YouTube that like cut together all the different Metropolis perspectives. I had always assumed that there was more of the Metropolis stuff in this based on those videos, because it's like, what, a few minutes? 2 minutes at most?
I did kind of like how this Batman, it wasn't directly the Batman Returns one, but it was kind of an alternate version.
Yeah, because how can it be? It's like No Way Home. It's like, it can't actually be Toby or Andrew's Spider-Man, or the villains more so. It can't be the villains, because some of those villains die. You have to just suspend your disbelief a little bit. Don't pay so much attention to the details there, and just enjoy the fan service.
But also there's nothing there that doesn't say it couldn't be him.
No,
I guess
not. But
you can make up your own interpretation.
When you look at Gotham in Barry's timeline, and you look at the Burton movies, or even the Schumacher movies, it's completely different. Gotham just looks like a normal city in these films, even after Barry changes things, I think, right? I mean, maybe we never get a glimpse of it, but he does say it's like the safest city in the world now, or safest city in the country. So it wouldn't be like this dark, gloomy hellscape where every building is held up by an Atlas statue. But he's good in this.
Not good enough that I'd want him back in all the movies, but...
Oh, no. This is a one-off thing. It would be like if they brought back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield permanently in the main MCU. Like, I wouldn't want that. The Barrys and Bruce locate a Kryptonian pod discovered in Siberia. Upon arrival, they instead find Kal-El's cousin, Kara Zor-El, imprisoned in the facility. They rescue Kara and return to Wayne Manor, where Barry enlists Bruce's help to regain his powers. The first two attempts fail, prompting Kara to fly Barry into a storm where he regains his powers. Kara, Bruce, and the Berries fight Zod and his forces. Kara learns that Zod intercepted Kal-El's escape pod from Krypton and in an attempt to extract the Codex needed to repopulate the Kryptonian species, killed him. Zod reveals that the Codex is actually within Kara before subduing and killing her, extracting the Codex from her blood. Meanwhile, Bruce sacrifices himself in an unsuccessful attempt to destroy Zod's ship. The Berries repeatedly time travel to save Bruce and Kara, but keep failing. Barry realizes the sequence of events cannot be changed, but Barry too keeps trying, which causes the multiverse to begin imploding. This is where the movie starts to fall apart for me.
This is a good plot summary. It's very concise and short.
Yeah, I agree. I wish they were all like this. I wish we hadn't have had to read like so much fluff from the previous episodes. Supergirl did not work for me at all. I think Sasha Kaye does a terrible job. Far and away the worst performance in the movie, followed closely by Michael Shannon, who is phoning it in. I'm sorry. I loved Michael Shannon in Man of Steel. I thought he was fantastic in that. In this, he's lost his bark. He feels neutered. Every line is so tired coming out of his mouth. He doesn't want to be there. And she is just so fucking bland.
The problem is they try to make Henry Cavill but girl.
And Henry Cavill was bland in Man of Steel, yeah.
Yeah, so they were just like, act bland.
I think she's somehow even worse than that, which is crazy, because he wasn't good in Man of Steel either.
He also had more to do, though.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, she has an Emmy. Daytime Emmy. But whatever. Like, maybe she's capable of better performances. I just think in this movie, which is the only thing I've ever seen her in, she does a fucking atrocious job. And it baffled me because, again, first time watching, the past 3 years, I had been told by people on the internet that she's one of the best parts of the movie, and that people were really upset that she wasn't going to get her own movie, or she wouldn't be going on to the new continuity. And I'm like, oh, okay, she must be the standout performance. But she's not. She's not. She's far and away the worst character in the film, worst actor in the film.
I mean, luckily they weren't too big in it, so I didn't notice it as much, but definitely the Supergirl was the weakest of, like, the main trio, I guess you'd call them. And I was just like, no, it did not work.
I also think it's goddamn hideous as far as, like, a final battle goes. I texted this to you and then I quickly unsent it because I wanted your fresh reaction to it. But the whole final battle looks like a Minecraft flat world.
It's like how they had the Void in Deadpool and Wolverine, and it was just like
yes.
a fucking Death Valley.
Yeah, no, Death Valley's got some color and some elevation. Deadpool and Wolverine, it was a fucking quarry. It looked like it was from a Power Rangers episode. And this is, like, even uglier than that because it's all clearly fake. At least they shot Deadpool and Wolverine on a real fucking gravel pit. This is all clearly green screen and shit. And it's just so flat and so lifeless. There's no color. There's nothing exciting going on. It is literally like a fucking Garry's Mod flat world where people just spawned in a bunch of action figures to make them fight each other. I thought it was hideous. What did you think of Keaton's death?
What did he do? He crashed?
He tried to blow up the Kryptonian AT-AT, and it was, like, protected with a shield, and so he just smiles, and then he crashes into it, followed by Ezra Miller going, "No!"
It was pretty funny.
I thought that was how he really died in the movie, though, because I've seen that clip out of context. I didn't know they went back in time again a few minutes to save Keaton, and I didn't know Supergirl died at all. So that was a surprise to me. But knowing that Keaton's dumb kamikaze death was essentially a punchline, on paper, I like all of it. I like Supergirl, I like the rescue scene, I like the way that she returns the favor by helping Barry get his powers back. I like Keaton's Batman, I like both Barrys. I like the lesson learned here that you can't mess with time, because some things will inevitably happen, no matter how much you try to change things. I like that Barry, too, gets a glimpse at what it's like to not learn that lesson, and, you know, how he protects Barry 1. Again, I was worried the whole time he was going to turn into a villain, and even when they reveal that the purple speedster guy who's been stalking Barry the whole movie is Barry 2, he ends up defeating himself. I mean, Barry 2 ends up defeating Barry 2, not Barry 1 defeats Barry 2, which would also be considered defeating himself. No, I like that. It's just, in practice, it all looks very ugly. Like, the action was not exciting to me for the most part. I like when Barry 2 makes the suit, and he's kind of learning how to use his powers better, and he's doing, like, the Palpatine thing. and they do those like coordinated takedowns together on bad guys. I like that, but the film is just so visually uninteresting and ugly. Whether they're in the barren desert or they're in the AI slob hellsphere, it looked hideous to me. This movie cost over $220 million to make. Why does it look like this?
Because there's just too much going on. I did kind of like when they kept traveling, and then, but like Barry 1 is saying it's useless, like we can't keep doing it. Barry 2 is like, no, we have to. And then he does kind of turn villainish, and then each time he gets injured, he has like he has like that thing in his arm, the piece of metal. He's got like another piece of metal in his back.
No, I like that too. I like that you see him taking the first steps into what would become the evil Barry, but he never gets there.
Why was it causing the multiverse to implode?
I really think the only reason why that happened is because they needed an excuse to shove in a bunch of cameos. I sincerely believe that is the only reason. Because this whole film is basically a tale of two Barrys, right? You've got Barry from the DCEU, and then the alternate Barry. So it's only these two timelines or whatever. Barry 2's actions are only affecting Barry 2. Unless the implication is that every time he goes back to change something, he's creating another timeline.
That's what I was just about to think.
Where the spheres are created, which means that Barry 2 fucking with shit is the only reason why Adam West or Chris Reeve or whatever exist. But those are their own separate spheres already. Like, we see the one with George Reeves, where there's a Jay Garrick who's time traveling. In that moment, we see Jay Garrick using the Speed Force to time travel. At the same time, he just happens to be there time traveling as them. It doesn't make any sense. You could also ask the question, like, did Barry 1 actually change things and end up in a different timeline because of that? Or is it because Barry 2, when he was evil in the future, knock him out of the Speed Force, just end up in a parallel timeline that has nothing to do with his decisions? And he just needs his powers to get back home. Because that's how I interpreted the film most of the time, is that Barry 2's timeline is not because he moved the can of tomatoes or whatever. I think if Barry 1 wasn't there, Barry 2 would have gotten his powers, maybe? Or never gotten his powers, and then the timeline would have just died. But in maybe in some way, he gets the powers, he's evil, he's trying to fix it. When he's old, he runs into Barry 1, knocks Barry 1 out because he thinks Barry 1's going to mess with stuff, and it's hard to wrap your head around, but I think it's mostly nonsense, so we don't have to worry about it.
I was wondering if it's because it's like, when they show it in the beginning, they show he explains the spaghetti pieces, then he breaks it off, and then it branches out. So I was wondering if maybe it was because every time he went back, it started like another branching section of the universe, and it was branching out too much and crashing into other universes.
Yeah, maybe. I have a problem with all of that. Not just because it's ugly or because it's like the worst kind of fan service I've ever seen, but even from like a story perspective. Ironically enough, I know how silly this sounds, but you could have kept this small scale in a way by just having the story between the two Barrys and the two timelines. And instead of doing that, you introduce all these other chrono balls, I guess they're called. Going back to the Future thing, I'm just going to spoil Back to the Future for you.
I shouldn't listen.
Marty goes back to the past, and he can't get back to the future because the time machine runs on plutonium, which he's not going to have access to in the 50s. And so him working with Doc Brown from the past have to find another way to power up the time machine to get him back to the future. That's like the broadest, like, one-line summary. He goes back, can't get back to the future. Him and younger Doc Brown have to figure out how to get him back.
That's why it's called Back to the Future.
They say it in the movie. Barry 1 thinks he's going back to the past, gets knocked out by Evil Flash, and he can't get back to the future because he loses his powers. And so now Barry 2, younger character, has to help him get back to his future. The chrono bullshit, the AI slop galaxy that we are exposed to here, it doesn't help the plot. It does nothing with the plot. We have all of these ghoulish, ugly puppets of dead actors, the worst, cheapest fan service I've ever seen, and none of it helps move the story. We get, like, a dead Christopher Reeve Superman and Supergirl from that movie from the 80s. We get Adam West, who's missing his ears, by the way, which just further feeds into my theory that this is generative AI.
Oh, his ears are short.
Because no, they're not there. If you look at a still from the movie, the Adam West Batsuit in the Chrono Bowl, there's no ears. All of this shit is incredibly distasteful and ugly, but it also doesn't serve any purpose for the story because every single one of these little cameos is just like them looking at the Chrono Bowl that the berries are in. George Reeves and Adam West and Jay Garrick and Christopher Reeve and Nicolas Cage, all of that shit, it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't matter at all. The only reason why it's there is to provide fan service, and it sucks as that too. And I was laughing my ass off when Nick Cage showed up as Superman fighting the giant spider, because that's not even from a movie. That's from a Kevin Smith story from like a 15-year-old YouTube video. That's how inside baseball it's become at this point. I can't imagine general audiences going to see this movie and appreciating the Nick Cage Superman fighting a spider thing, unless you're one of the like 200,000 people that have seen a 15-year-old YouTube video.
These movies are for the fans, so they should know.
Fans of that Kevin Smith clip, sure, but like, you're not even giving fan service to a movie that exists or almost existed. You know, it's just like, what are we fucking doing here?
There was another thing that felt weird to me about that is they had like, it was like Superman and Batman were the only ones getting the fan service, and like they could have shown Linda Carter, they could have shown like the 90s Flash or something. It was just a little weird that they went in on doing these like CGI models and then they only did like a couple. They could have shown so much more.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Like, other than Jay Garrick, who also looks suspiciously like a stolen AI likeness of the guy who played him in the Arrowverse, it's just Batman and Superman. You're right. I think I remember reading that Muschietti wanted Linda Carter in it as well. I mean, look, the less the better. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But he also said that Warner Brothers didn't put any guardrails up for them. They could have had anybody they wanted. So I'm wondering what the problem was.
Because I know they did something similar on... They had like the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, which was first and foremost the Arrowverse crossover. But they also showed like Titans, Doom Patrol, Stargirl, and like a bunch of other shows that weren't in the Arrowverse. And I think even some of the movies, maybe? So a bit more involved than just like a movie that didn't happen, the TV show.
Yeah, no, you're right. Movie-wise, I think they cross over with Superman Returns, because Brandon Routh comes back as Superman, and that's technically the same continuity as Christopher Reeve Superman.
So as we know, the unknown speedster who initially knocked Barry out of the Speed Force returns, and is revealed to be an older, future version of Barry 2, who still believes he can defeat Zod and save his Earth. Barry decides to reverse the changes he made to the timeline by letting his mom Nora die. The elder Barry 2 attempts to kill Barry to stop him, but young Barry 2 sacrifices himself and is impaled instead, causing the old Barry 2 to fade from existence. Barry reverts the timeline and comes to terms with his mother's death. However, he subtly alters the past by moving the canned tomatoes to a higher shelf. Returning to the present day, Barry attends Henry's court hearing, where the security footage now reveals Henry looking up to grab the can, allowing for his exoneration. Barry is then contacted by Bruce, whose appearance has changed once again due to the timeline alteration.
In a post-credits scene, Barry is shown out drinking with Aquaman, with whom he is sharing his story about the alternate Batman/Earth. Arthur passes out in a puddle, and Barry goes back home.
Kind of a nothing burger post-credits scene, more of a comedic one.
Yeah, it was fine.
But yeah, so back to the main story. So I did like, I guess it's the twist of like the Elder Barry 2 being the villain from the beginning who kicks him out of the timeline, and you can kind of see the design cues. He has all the metal pieces sticking out of him from all his attempts over the years. I thought it was kind of interesting. I know it's the tropish, like alternate main character, person with the same powers, but that always happens with the Flash anyways, because he's a speedster, so... I think that it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because by Barry being the hero, it's him basically doing something not very heroic and giving up.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's a very unconventional resolution in the sense that he's trying to convince his other self, like, hey, you just have to let everyone die. Mm-hmm. There's no other solution. Otherwise, you're going to kill even more people. Oh, I agree.
Beyond that, of having to tell the other Barry he has to do that, basically the way to save the day is he has to go back in time and basically get his mom killed. Which, not even only that, but then he decides to see her face to face and talk to her, and just knowing that he's gone that long without seeing her and knows what's going to happen, and he's basically causing her death, because even though he does move where the cans are in the store, that still does cause her to die. The only thing that changes is that his dad is exonerated in court. And I thought that scene hit really hard with his mom in the store.
Yeah, I liked it. I was a little distracted because I had done the research on Ezra Miller already, and there was some altercation that they had with someone in a supermarket. But it was a good scene. I did like that. And I do like that, again, the movie kind of gets to have its cake and eat it too, where it's like, the lesson is don't fuck with the past. You can't save everybody. But he still manages to save somebody, because you're right, he has to let his mom die, but he does save his dad.
See, I have a big problem with that, though.
Do you?
I mean, he learns the lesson of, like, you can't change it, and then he does it, then he goes back forward, and then he's like, oh, Bruce is different. So then, is he gonna go back in time and change it back, or is he just gonna live with it?
That's a good question. I interpreted the Clooney scene as a punchline, in the same way that Eric Stoltz was a punchline with the Back to the Future in the other universe. I think the implication, at least for me, based on the post-credit scene with Aquaman, is that at the end of the day, Barry does get Ben Affleck Batman, and the timeline all sorted out. It would be a real fucking bummer if, to do that, Barry would have to let his dad die, or spend the rest of his life in prison, though.
So they don't show it?
Well, either that, or he finds some other way to nudge the timeline that would save his dad without screwing up anything else. Mm-hmm. So what I'm imagining is that off screen, and maybe they should have done like a montage of this, that would have been pretty funny. You just see Barry finding different ways to save his dad, going back to the future, seeing something wrong, going back and changing it in a different way. But it's like in every situation there'd be something like minorly off, or like George Clooney is Batman. But the way he's talking to Aquaman at the end, it sounds like everything's back to normal. So maybe he let his dad die. I don't think they would have let the movie end that way.
Well, not die, but just to stay in prison.
It is a little contradictory, though. That's like he does get to save his dad and keep the timeline with no changes. I do agree with you. But I do like the idea that you can nudge time a little bit. Just a little bit. Without fucking things up.
That was just my biggest problem, because it goes from this emotional scene with his mom and basically finding out that, like, he can't save everyone, and then he basically just goes, oh wait, I can save someone, I can save my dad. Like, it is nice, but then going from this, like, scene that's like makes me tear up because it's so sad, and then it just goes to this kind of punchline where he's like, oh, it's a different Batman. I don't know, something about it felt a little off to me.
I do think the movie would probably be better without the Clooney scene.
Plus, we don't really get closure from, because he talks to Ben Affleck Bruce earlier in the movie, and that's a pretty big, like, emotional part, and we never see him again.
Absolutely.
It would have been a nice closure.
The movie would probably be better without it, but it's what we got, and could be worse as far as endings go. I think in general, the film works for me a lot in the first half, but once they get to Zod's ship, it all kind of falls apart for me. It just becomes very ugly. The story gets stupider. I don't think Supergirl's very good. Zod's very good. And you're right. The ending does contradict itself a little bit. If the lesson is don't fuck with time travel and he still manages to save his dad, well, you should watch Back to the Future. But in some ways that's not too dissimilar to Back to the Future's ending as well. I don't think the movie sucks. I think the movie is fine. I would say I liked it up until we get to the final act.
Part of me wonders how much of that was studio mandated, because clearly they had this idea that they wanted this to be a multiversal film from the beginning. So to me, it felt like that first half was kind of Christina and Andy Muschietti's take on it and making it their own, and then trying to find some sort of way to make it end up to that last act.
I think you're right. They were insistent on adapting Flashpoint for whatever reason. I guess maybe it's the most famous Flash story. I have no idea. And there's also the fact that this film has gone through so many other people. And I didn't mention this earlier in the episode because I forgot, and there isn't like a substantiated claim. But in 2023, there was a superhero film, a major superhero film, which I know it doesn't really narrow it down because these days there's a bunch.
There was 4 DC ones that year.
Right, exactly. But there was a major superhero film registered with the WGA in 2023 that was said to have 45 different writers. And I'm pretty sure, and the internet is pretty sure, that it's the Flash. So it's like, how much of the shit in the back half that I absolutely hated is the fault of Christina Hodson? Probably not a lot of it. I mean, we already know the Clooney scene was James Gunn's idea. If it was Muschietti just going along with what they were doing before, they would have just had Keaton and Supergirl, which...
I think I would have hated that even more.
I think I might have hated it less, in the sense that it shows that he fucked with the timeline to save his dad, but there are consequences. Now, as for a franchise going forward, that would suck. We've talked about how much that would suck. But going for the punchline may have robbed it of some of its emotional impact. I don't disagree with that. Let's move on to Did It Work? Did it work to decide to loosely adapt Flashpoint as the first solo film for The Flash? Kind of? I mean, it's because it's so loose. I am skeptical to even call it an adaptation of Flashpoint, because Aquaman is not here, Wonder Woman's not here, Cyborg is not here, Thomas Wayne is not here. A lot of the things that are, like, central to Flashpoint... fuck, how could we forget? Zoom is not here. He's not here at all. He never shows up. Wait, I guess we can assume that he still killed Barry's mom, which is completely unresolved, in the sense that we never see it happen. We never see him confront his arch nemesis.
That's for the second movie.
Oh, yeah. The idea of calling this an adaptation of Flashpoint, it's not really. It is a time travel story, but Morrison put it best. Like, this is more Back to the Future than Flashpoint. So I would say no. No, because if it was Flashpoint, it would be terrible. It's not a faithful adaptation. It wouldn't be a good idea to do that for the solo film. But also, it's not Flashpoint. So I guess it's a loaded question. Everything wraps up nicely. So as far as future films go, there's nothing here that would negatively affect the second film or the third film in a Flash franchise. So the worry about making Flashpoint the first film in the Flash's series of films is kind of unsubstantiated, because one, it's not Flashpoint, and two, if you want to call this Flashpoint, it wrapped up in such a neat way that there are no consequences.
Yeah, Flashpoint was touted for the fact that it reset the DC Universe to the New 52. This doesn't do that.
That's what I was trying to say. When we were talking about this last night, we have the bullet point here. Did the Flash, quote, reset everything and lead right into the DCU like Gunn touted it would? No. At the end of this movie, the timeline is back to the status quo. Maybe a little bit different, because he still wanted to save his dad, so maybe it branched in some inconsequential way by the end when he's done fiddling with it. But my point is that this has nothing to do with the DCU, and I would argue it has nothing to do with any of the future movies. Like, there's no fucking way Blue Beetle or Aquaman 2 is affected in any way by this. Nor would Wonder Woman 3 or anything else that they were planning on making and scrapped when Gunn and Safran took over. This is a completely self-contained adventure. It's got high stakes, but it's not at all what Flashpoint was for DC Comics.
The decision to loosely adapt Flashpoint, it's dumb that they even thought of doing that in the first place, but I liked the way that they did it, because it was more of like a riff on Flashpoint and then the DCEU. And I kind of liked that that's the way that they did it. And it wasn't some huge big thing. It was just kind of, it was a bit more personal for the Flash as a character. If we just ignore that they didn't really adapt it, no, it's not a good idea to do it for the first one. And I probably would have liked to see more of a normal story, and then this would have been maybe a better second movie. I don't know.
You make an interesting point about how it's, like, I guess, paying homage to the DCEU. I mean, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I guess mostly Man of Steel.
Yeah, mostly Man of Steel, yeah. But you do get an appearance from Batman and Wonder Woman. And you get mentions of... and Aquaman, too. And you get mentions of Cyborg. In a way, this kind of feels like the end. If this was the final film of the franchise, it would feel much more appropriate. We get a lot of time spent reflecting on past events in a kind of a similar way that, like, Avengers Endgame did, where it's like we've got all this stuff with Man of Steel, and we see Batman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and we get mentions of Cyborg. It's not necessarily the greatest hits in the way that Avengers Endgame was, but that's simply because the DCU doesn't have the greatest hits to pull from. But I do like the idea that, like, this could be the end, and it kind of rhymes in a way with Man of Steel being the beginning. the DCEU is just such a fucking messy franchise that doesn't really work to its fullest potential. But in that way, it's kind of poetic, and I do like it in a sort of romantic way. But this would have been a good stopping point, in theory.
Or if they just swapped it with Aquaman.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way, I mean, I haven't seen it, so who knows, but there's no way anything in Aquaman 2 would affect this movie's plot.
I don't think there is.
And then the final image of the DCEU would be Aquaman drowning in a puddle. Which would be pretty good. And that brings us to the aftermath of release.
So, as for reception and critical response, The Flash got overwhelmingly positive reviews, with 100% certified fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. No, just kidding. The Flash received a 63% score on Rotten Tomatoes, with an audience score of 81%. And just as a note, 63% is fresh on the scoring guide. It has a Metacritic score of 55, and it got a cinema score of B, breaking the DCEU B+ score streak. In a bad way. Which honestly, to me, this kind of seems, I don't know, I liked the movie. I thought it was fun. It's better than fucking Black Adam, come on.
No, I agree. I would rather watch this again than Black Adam. I'd rather watch this again than Shazam 2. There are a bunch of DCU movies I'd rather watch this over.
So yeah, I just thought the scores seemed a little low for me. But it doesn't matter what the critics say, because what speaks louder is money. Or whatever that we usually say.
I think we've done something different or fucked it up in every episode. Money talks. That's the point. Money talks.
Yeah, money
that's
talks.
The expression. Money talks. Money talks louder than critics.
The film had a reported budget of $200 to $220 million, which is still less than Black Adam.
Wait, is that true?
Isn't Black Adam like 229 max?
Oh, 260. Holy fuck. Yeah, because there was like a $70 million discrepancy. You had pointed out it went from 190 to 260.
On its opening weekend, The Flash made $55 million domestically. It had a second weekend drop of 72%, which was the third largest drop ever for a superhero film behind Morbius and Steel. Two greats. And on the third weekend, it dropped 65%, making only $5.2 million. Probably because, as we mentioned, it came out in a stacked month.
Yeah.
Final totals: domestic $108.1 million, international $163.3 million, for a total of $271.4 million. It's estimated that The Flash lost Warner Brothers over $200 million. And as we said at the top of this episode, this is the biggest bomb in the DCEU, breaking the record set last week by Shazam 2.
In an interview in 2023 after the film's release, Jay Oliva would elaborate a little bit on The Flash's original plot, as well as shining a light on the DCU as a whole. He said that initially there was going to be a Flash trilogy that would build up to Flashpoint, featuring Zoom as a sort of overarching villain of the DCEU, and that the universe would be rebooted after the events of the film. I don't know where he's getting this from. I mean, at what point was this being considered? Because there's Zack Snyder's plans, which don't really mesh with this.
Well, he was talking about Zack Snyder's plans initially, because he's like, well, initially it was supposed to be Zack's 5 films and then Suicide Squad, and then we were expanding on it. And then he was talking about how it was going to be the Flash trilogy, and I think it was back with Rick Famuyiwa was back on the project. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah, wow, okay.
But I don't know how I feel about this.
I don't either. I mean, as an overarching villain for Flash, sure. For the entire franchise, though?
It seemed weird to me. I'd have to see it in action to fully judge it.
And while Warner Brothers clearly didn't intend on bringing Ezra Miller back after this whole fiasco, when asked, the company would be diplomatic about the issue, with Peter Safran saying, quote, "Ezra is fully committed to the recovery right now. And we talk to them. We're in constant contact, and when the time is right, we'll have the conversation with them and decide what's best for them personally." And Gunn would say, quote, "Let's see what happens. It is now 2026, and there are still no plans publicly available for The Flash in the DCU. Hopefully, Ezra Miller isn't part of them, and I hope even more that it won't take another 20 years to make one."
And just as a little bit of a funny aftermath, when this movie came out, there was a meme that became popular on the Arkham subreddit where they took the ears off of Batman and just said, "Yeah, I'm man." And it caused the downfall of the Arkham subreddit, which was first focused on the Arkham games. And it has now devolved into memes. One of my favorites ever. That subreddit makes me laugh.
It's a fantastic subreddit. It feels like you're entering a no man's land. A completely quarantined hellhole.
So after going through production hell, The Flash lost its footing and stumbled at the box office. With reboot looming on the horizon and the DCEU heading towards its finish line, One of the franchise's last moments would be dedicated to a fresh face in the universe with the introduction of Blue Beetle. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode or hated it, let us know in the comments and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to the podcast. If you have any questions or comments for us that you'd like us to read during our live stream after the show ends in a few weeks, please send them to @FrankBroadcasts on Instagram or leave a comment wherever you're listening. See you next episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh my god, stop it.
Okay, Thomas, let's take a week off. We're taking a week off. It smells like old Little Caesars in here. I made a terrible mistake.
That's a great smell to have.
It wasn't even that good.
Oh, mine was. It was so good.
Yeah, the one by my house is dog shit.